Life P download. Let's all get on Richard's level. Thank you. I want to tell you about the Mises Mayors PAC, formerly known as Mises GOP. They're raising money to support Buck Johnson of the Counterflow podcast for city council. Buck is one of the best leaders our community has. We saw in 2020 what happens when weak leaders are in charge and how having just one good guy in office can save many lives. Mises Mayors works to put good Misesian men in office who will fight back against a Great Reset and will push local policies such as contractually obligating cops to protect the citizens and passing town charter amendments stating that the government gets its legitimacy from property owners. I personally give to Mises Mayors every month because I truly believe this PAC has the right strategy, the strategy created by HOPPA, and I'm asking my listeners to support them by going to misesgop.org/Pete and pledging a few dollars per month to support.
You're 6 minutes away from a live episode of Free Talk Live. Listen live at freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And a week that began with Russian President Vladimir Putin formally annexing 4 parts of Ukraine ended with President Biden telling a group of Democratic Party funders that he fears the possibility of Armageddon if the Russian leader uses nuclear weapons. The White House says there's been no change in America's nuclear posture, despite growing threats from figures close to the Russian leader. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says no new intelligence has been gleaned, suggesting a nuclear strike is imminent.
No, the president was speaking about concerns about Putin's threats to use nuclear weapons, just as he did at the UN General Assembly. And we have done over the past few weeks, you have heard us say this over and over again. You've heard it from the National Security Advisor, how seriously we are taking this.
She again insisted that the US will never recognize the annexed Ukrainian regions as part of Russia. President Biden said the US is trying to determine what kind of off-ramp might entice Vladimir Putin to step back from the abyss. Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin insisted on Friday there's only one way out.
The way out of the conflict is for Russia to leave Ukraine. That's the way out of the conflict. Thank you.
There were 2 separate awful events in Asia over the past week. In Indonesia, at least 125 people were killed in a stampede at a soccer stadium after the police used tear gas to disperse fans who had poured onto the pitch. An internal police review described that decision as a mistake, saying no orders had been given to use the gas. Meanwhile, in Thailand, 37 people, including 20 children, were killed when a former police officer opened fire at a nursery school in the northeast of the country. He later killed himself. Reporter Tommy Walker in Bangkok covered that story.
It's rare to have mass shootings, but it looks like it's going to be Thailand's worst ever mass shooting. He was obviously on a rampage, and the Thai chief of police said that they believe that the gunman was on some form of amphetamine.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had another rough week. There were mixed reviews for her speech at the Conservative Party's annual conference, in which she insisted she can navigate the country through a winter of tempest and turmoil. The UK's National Grid, though, warned this week of possible 3-hour power cuts for homeowners as the winter advances. US President Joe Biden unveiled new moves on marijuana just 1 month ahead of crucial midterm elections.
No one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs.
He's pardoning thousands of marijuana convictions, targeting the racial disparity in prosecutions for possession, and ordering his health secretary to consider whether weed should really still be treated in legal terms on a par with heroin and LSD. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. US traders will have their attention turned squarely on fresh inflation data due out later this week. Investors and the Federal Reserve will be hoping that recent interest rate rises are starting to cool price pressures. With the preview from FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo.
Last month's Consumer Price Index figures revealed that inflation ticked up despite the Federal Reserve's aggressive moves to ease price pressures. On Thursday, September CPI figures are set to be released, and Wall Street will be hoping to see signs that the Fed's rate hikes are beginning to have the desired effect. On Wednesday, we also have the release of minutes from the last central bank meeting. Investors will be keen to assess the Fed's appetite for further rate hikes and whether recession fears are starting to influence their thinking.
The Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus on Friday. Two organizations, the Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties and Russia's Memorial, were honored, alongside jailed Belarusian activist Ales Bialyatsky. FSN's Sally Patterson had more on that story.
The Nobel Peace Prize recipients were praised for their efforts to document war crimes, human rights abuses and the abuse of power. Ales Bialyatsky has championed democracy in Belarus for decades. The Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties monitors political persecutions in occupied Ukraine, and the human rights organization Memorial was shut down earlier this year by the Supreme Court of Russia. Sally Patterson, London.
In the coming week, Airbus and Air France go on trial in Paris over a crash that claimed nearly 230 lives over the Atlantic in 2009. President Biden heads to Colorado to campaign in America's midterm elections, and the final hearing of the committee investigating the Capitol Hill riots will take place in Congress. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. Simon Marks reports.
Last month, the FDA approved Hallucex, a new class of weight loss drug that helps users avoid overeating by producing nightmarish hallucinations whenever food is around. Hallucex targets the brain's cerebral cortex, stimulating the centers responsible for fear and visual processing. Test subjects reported an unprecedented decrease in appetite and showed dramatic weight loss, with only 18% reporting night terrors or subsequent cardiac arrest.
It's designed to make fatty and sugary foods even scarier. An apple just looks like it has fangs, but a milkshake will threaten you and your family by name.
Earlier incarnations of the drug proved to be too powerful and produced mental states in which test subjects no longer believed that food had ever existed. An unshakable belief that the subject had to eat all of the food on the planet in order to prevent food from rising up and destroying the human race.
No, you don't understand. I have to do this.
Or the conviction that food could be negotiated with diplomatically. With the Lab Report, I'm Aisha Patel.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, kicking off the live Sunday edition of the program. You can join us. Your phone lines are always open, and you can bring up anything you want to discuss. The number is 603-283-6160 if you want people on a national radio show to hear what you think about stuff. Otherwise, we bring things to the table on the way here tonight. The best mullet in America. The hunt is on. We're going to talk about that. Plus, there's a jet fuel water contamination controversy involving the military down in Hawaii. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
It's Nikki.
And Rich.
To start things out tonight, though, Kanye West, not someone we normally talk about here on Free Talk Live. We don't do a whole lot of pop culture.
Because why would we?
Right. Yeah, I mean, normally pop culture is pretty vapid. There's not really much of import that goes on there. It's generally considered a distraction, I think, by people who like to talk about deeper issues. But every now and then, somebody in the pop culture world kind of wades into some serious issues. And Kanye West has apparently now been locked out both Instagram and his Twitter accounts.
For being a white supremacist.
He's some kind of supremacist, maybe. It's not real clear, at least from the mainstream media. If you just believe what they say, then you would think that. But what does he actually believe? I don't know.
Well, he was talking about going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people on
Which
Twitter.
Which is funny in and of itself. Because he said DEFCON with a TH.
Do you think he just made a mistake?
No.
I think he I don't know if he's having some sort of psychotic break, but I would say probably for like almost the past 10 years. Like even
That
before
he's been having a 10-year-long psychotic break?
Yeah, which I don't know if like a long-term psychotic break is a thing, but he's definitely been acting strange. Like early Kanye West was not this crazy, and he wasn't saying these outlandish things.
So you've been following his career then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say so, yeah.
Good rapper Kanye West.
And
Normal.
and that's the difference, right? Because before his music was pretty good. Like I listened to it. I thought it was all right. And then once his music started sucking, then he started going crazy. So there might be a correlation there.
The search for attention.
Do you think I think some people would suggest that when you are such a big star, and Kanye is probably one of the top, if not the top, rap artist in the world right now. Maybe is that fair to say? Like
maybe by popularity, I don't know if the record numbers would bear
reflect
that.
Reflect it. Yeah. Okay, but let's say active.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. We're not comparing him to Snoop Dogg or whatever.
In the political sphere, in the public eye, he's probably one of
current playing artist. He's huge. I think I saw his Twitter account has like 30 million followers. I mean, by no means is he a nobody in the rap world.
Right.
Maybe it's one of those things where they say that once you get to be so popular, you end up being surrounded by a bunch of yes men, and people are afraid to tell you, Kanye, that album kind of sucks, right? Like that was not a good track, or that's a bad take, or whatever.
And you have people that are so loyal to these artists where they're like
they can do no wrong.
They're blinded by it, right? So the song could be complete garbage, but they're like, well, it's a Kanye West song, so I'm still gonna play it.
He is Jesus, apparently.
Jesus. Not one person in his entourage said like, maybe you shouldn't wear that White Lives Matter shirt. Right, like that's.
Well, Candace Owens was there wearing one too.
Understood.
Which are like the two people who you would expect to wear those shirts.
She's also the other anomaly because she's like the minority black chick.
She's a conservative
but
black
also
chick.
Conservative, right? And that pisses off people on the left and the liberals because like you're black. You're not supposed to act like that. You're supposed to be on this side of that line, and
of course,
she doesn't fall in line.
Kanye made headlines during the Trump administration for wearing a MAGA hat at some point.
Right.
So he's at least in recent years, he's been of this, hey, let's troll people kind of mindset, it seems. But yeah, maybe one of the reasons why he seems to be crazy is that he literally has no one to check him. So he just does whatever it is that comes into his head, and no one's willing to tell him to stop because they're worried he's going to fire him or whatever it is that they're worried about.
He also jumped on stage and interrupted Taylor Swift.
That was years ago.
That was a long time ago.
That's not normal behavior either,
no,
and that was well early on.
That is, right. That's the behavior of somebody who has absolutely no tethers. Does not care what people think, and to some extent, that's an important trait, right? Like you don't really want to, as an artist, you don't really want to care what people think about you. Although to some extent, you ultimately have to, because if people don't like what you do, you won't sell any albums. So it's like a weird balancing act, right? Like
it's definitely balancing.
You have to be true to yourself, but you have to also be able to sell albums.
You can be an artist and respectful.
Yes,
those aren't mutually exclusive things.
You can. At least he didn't get up on the stage and knock her out like Will Smith tried to do. That was pretty bad. So Kanye, according to MSN.com, his Twitter actually has confirmed it has locked Kanye West, who now goes by Ye, out of his account after he posted a supposedly anti-Semitic tweet on Saturday. They said the account in question has been locked due to a violation of Twitter's policies. Now, they didn't say, I don't think, how long he's been locked out. So if you go to his profile, it still shows it. So he hasn't been banned from the platform. He's
just wait for Elon Musk to bring him back.
Well, Elon Musk actually welcomed him back to Twitter.
There you go.
Because apparently Kanye has not been using Twitter up until just within the last weekend.
Okay.
So Twitter has since removed the offensive tweet, but several users screenshotted the post before Twitter took it down. He said in the supposedly offensive post, quote, "I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people," which the Jewish people is in all caps. He said further, the funny thing is I actually can't be anti-Semitic because black people are actually Jew also. You guys have toyed with me and tried to blackball anyone who ever opposes your agenda.
I don't know if your article gets into it, but he had a DM, back and forth with Diddy about it too, and he accused Diddy of being one of the Jews sent by the Jewish agenda to put him in his place.
So, like, is he on drugs? I'm just trying to, like, figure out what's going on here, because normal people don't think this way. Normally sane people are, it seems like a psychotic break to me. Like, it seems like this is how a person would act that was maybe abusing meth, and they get real paranoid and like a lot of fleeting thoughts and delusions.
Well, I mean, is it a delusion? Look, I'm not taking his side. I would not group all Jewish people together, but is it a delusion to say that Jewish people are overrepresented in the halls of entertainment?
No.
In the high end, it is not delusional.
It's not delusional to say that.
Right, that's a fact.
But that sounds like a much more cohesive statement than what he said.
But it also sounds like it could be taken as racist if worded just slightly differently.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Jews run Hollywood is different from Jews are overrepresented in entertainment. But it's the same sentiment.
Well, yeah. You could also be like...
And banking, right?
Former co-host Chris Cantwell, who we fired for being a racist here on Free Talk Live, who actually, when you finally drill down and talk to him enough about what he believes, will tell you essentially that he's a Jewish supremacist. He's a racist for Jews, even though he's against them. Like, he believes Jewish people are superior to white people or whatever, and he doesn't like that.
Okay, and okay, and
it's a bizarre form of racism.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
So from what I've heard of Chris Cantwell, I will say two things. Number one, I think the character Chris Cantwell blended too much into the man Chris Cantwell, and the man got lost in the character. I don't know.
Seems like it.
Okay,
yeah.
And number two, if you lean upon the science, right, as much as Cantwell did, regardless of how you feel about those studies, right?
You mean like IQ studies?
The IQ studies, or the bell curve, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Jews, as a group, tend to be higher on that curve than other groups. So if you're going to disparage minorities for being lower on the curve, you then have to be accepting of Jews being higher on that curve if you believe the curve as a whole. So it's very possible that he went, well, I don't like minorities because they're dumb, and I don't like Jews because they're smarter than me. Like, middle of the bell curve is the only acceptable place to be as a white man in this country.
The number here, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. Your comments on Kanye, and that's not where it all, it's not where it all started. You mentioned that he wore this White Lives Matter shirt, so we want to cover that coming up as well. And, of course, your thoughts are welcome on whatever's on your mind. The live Sunday show continues, 603-283-6160.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
Besides, we just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
And we're back.
Back again.
Shady's back. Tell a friend.
We're talking about rap, actually. We're talking about Kanye West and him going off the rails. No checks, no balances. He's just doing whatever he wants to do. And getting banned from Twitter or restricted on Twitter. Apparently banned from Instagram as well.
I mean, isn't that like a badge of honor if you're conservative at this point anyway?
Yeah, pretty much.
We'll talk about it. Plus, Bitcoin.com is the best source for learning about cryptocurrency. If you're ready to start learning about crypto like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, just click Get Started at the top of the page, and you'll find some useful information, including videos that will introduce you to some of the new concepts you really ought to learn about before you decide to put some money into cryptocurrency, which you can also do through Bitcoin.com, by the way. Bitcoin.com, in addition, has the latest news headlines from the world of crypto. Just go to news.bitcoin.com to get those every single day. And again, if you're ready to start learning about crypto, go to Get Started at the top of the page at bitcoin.com. We're going to go to your calls and thoughts, and then more about Kanye West. Paul is on the line listening online in New Jersey. Go ahead, Paul. Oh, hang on one second. I think I had you muted. Now you're good. Go ahead.
Hello?
We have you.
Okay, yeah. I think it's ironic that, both Candace Owens and Kanye West both have white spouses. So, of course, white lives matter to them if they plan on getting any.
Okay. Okay.
So I think that could play a role in their psychological motives for doing this, because I think they could actually be overcompensating for perhaps guilt for marrying outside their race, because they probably are getting pressure and looks from other blacks about them having non-black spouses. That's one thing I'd like to
Now, are you just speculating on that, or do you happen to know something about there being pressure about that? Because I would like to hope that we're beyond that at this point, where people who know you or whatever, or even if they don't know you, they would think, oh, he's with somebody who makes him happy, they're happy together or whatever. I mean, good for them. Why would it matter to anyone what... I mean, there's obviously racists out there that are going to, on all sides, that are going to believe that, but are they really a large enough chunk of people to where it should matter what they think?
I have heard the narrative before that white women are taking all of the good black men. I have heard black women say that before.
And all
whether
they're stuck
it's
with
true,
is white guys.
probably not. But I've heard that before.
Paul, anything else you want to share?
Yeah, one other thing concerning Jewish overrepresentation in government, particularly, I think is something dangerous, actually, because many of them harbor allegiance towards Israel, and they'll steal or pervert American foreign policy and favor it with a pro-Israeli slant. And I really want to urge you and your audience to look up, there's a list on the Jews in the Biden administration, and it's over at the Jewish Virtual Library. And you'll find that a lot of the key positions in our government, Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, Tony Blinken, Secretary of State, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and on, are basically our positions filled with Jews.
I get what you're saying.
That's
but
another weird one.
Even the conservative types or whatever, whether they be Jewish or not, are all allied with Israel, right? Like there's this huge push towards sending taxpayer money to this one particular state, and
it
begs
the question
DC.
why. It begs the question why.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's a religious belief, right? Don't they want
Is
to?
it?
Well, as I understand it, go ahead, Paul, if you know about the religious.
No, Jews have a strong tribal identity. That's why they haven't intermarried and broken up, as they live as a minority among Christians for the past
But that doesn't answer the question as to why Israel is so entrenched with people who are not, Jewish. Everyone in D.C., it seems, are united towards quote-unquote helping or allying, sending billions of dollars to Israel. So, why is that?
Have the power. Because they have the power. Because Jews are disproportionately wealthy and in key positions of finance, as you agreed to before. You stated this on your show.
Thank you, Paul, for the call tonight. Appreciate it.
That could make sense.
I have heard that it is because certain conservative religious people want to forward the end times, that there's a belief that by helping Israel, I'm sorry, I'm not a Bible scholar or whatever, so I'm sure I'm going to retell this somewhat inaccurately, but that by empowering that particular government, they're going to somehow hasten the end. There's like a certain thing that gets triggered at the end times in the Bible if they do X, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what it is.
So when Jews win the war in the Middle East, like the world ends, like that's the.
Well, it's kind of like the second coming, right? But except they don't believe in Jesus in that way.
They don't even have a first coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's something the Christians believe. This isn't about what the Jews believe.
Yeah.
It's about what the Christians believe, and so that explains why there's so many conservative Christians who are like, "Yeah, go Israel," because whatever. And maybe Bonnie knows the answer. She's off the air tonight, but I'll check with her because she's pretty well read on the whole Bible thing.
I mean, Paul's point about the overrepresentation in banking makes a little bit more sense than that, right? Because if they control the finances and your goal of getting into government is to be a millionaire, right, at the public's expense,
you do what they say.
You do what the people with the money say.
Yeah, that could be it too. Yeah. Could be a combo of all of those things. Let's talk to Robert. He's in South Carolina. Go ahead, Robert.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to say that, I'm half Jewish and half Christian, and I can see this from the inside, the way this is going. And I can give you the answer right off the top of my head. I know exactly what it is. They say that the Chinese and the Jews have the top marks when it comes to all kinds of tests. Well, I can tell you that the difference between the two families, because my paternal grandmother is the daughter of a very successful Jewish businessman from Venice, Italy, a Sephardic Jew who had a business that was European-wide, and my maternal grandfather's paternal grandfather was a Roman senator, one of the last of the Roman senators when Rome came to an end in 1861 as an independent country, as a city-state. Okay, so I know that, and they were both very successful, and I know what the difference is. The difference is that the Jews, that is my patriarchal grandmother. She's half Sephardic Jew, half Ashkenazi Jew. When I was a little kid, she made on Sundays, I was over at her place, and she would go through my work that I was doing at school pedantically to show me how it should be done. A mother should sit down with her child, and she'll go through each exercise at the end of the day and make sure that the child understands everything, and that could take a while. The Chinese do the same thing. There's a very, very successful Chinese man on the radio.
So just to clarify what you're saying here, you're saying that your Jewish grandmother, she was more diligent with you? She went over more homework?
Or as a culture, the Jews and the Chinese
my
people
mom, I figured I got this book from a guy by the name of Dr. Spock that convinced her that her philosophy was correct, which says basically let your kid run well, do just fine. And my paternal grandmother, she thought that was horrible. She looked down at me as a small child. I was about 8 years old.
Well, thank you for the story tonight. The number here is 603-283-6160. I mean, it's just a case study. It's just his personal experience. I don't know if you can extrapolate that into anything.
I don't think it's a bad thing for parents to be that close to the children.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I just don't know if there's any evidence that it's a Jewish tradition or that it makes Jewish people are more likely than Christians to spend time with their kids and go over the homework. But that's his story. I'm not taking it from him. More coming up here. This is Free Talk Live. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And a week that began with Russian President Vladimir Putin formally annexing 4 parts of Ukraine ended with President Biden telling a group of Democratic Party funders that he fears the possibility of Armageddon if the Russian leader uses nuclear weapons. The White House says there's been no change in America's nuclear posture, despite growing threats from figures close to the Russian leader. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says no new intelligence has been gleaned, suggesting a nuclear strike is imminent.
No, the president was speaking about concerns about Putin's threats to use nuclear weapons, just as he did at the UN General Assembly, and we have done over the past few weeks. You have heard us say this over and over again. You've heard it from the National Security Advisor, how seriously we are taking this.
She again insisted that the US will never recognize the annexed Ukrainian regions as part of Russia. President Biden said the US is trying to determine what kind of off-ramp might entice Vladimir Putin to step back from the abyss. Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin insisted on Friday there's only one way out.
The way out of the conflict is for Russia to leave Ukraine. That's the way out of the conflict. Thank you.
There were 2 separate awful events in Asia over the past week. In Indonesia, at least 125 people were killed in a stampede at a soccer stadium after the police used tear gas to disperse fans who had poured onto the pitch. An internal police review described that decision as a mistake, saying no orders had been given to use the gas. Meanwhile, in Thailand, 37 people, including 20 children, were killed when a former police officer opened fire at a nursery school in the northeast of the country. He later killed himself. Reporter Tommy Walker in Bangkok covered that story.
It's rare to have mass shootings, but it looks like it's going to be Thailand's worst ever mass shooting. He was obviously on a rampage, and the Thai chief of police said that they believe that the gunman was on some form of amphetamine.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had another rough week. There were mixed reviews for her speech at the Conservative Party's annual conference, in which she insisted she can navigate the country through a winter of tempest and turmoil. The UK's National Grid, though, warned this week of possible 3-hour power cuts for homeowners as the winter advances. advances. US President Joe Biden unveiled new moves on marijuana just 1 month ahead of crucial midterm elections.
No one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs.
He's pardoning thousands of marijuana convictions, targeting the racial disparity in prosecutions for possession, and ordering his health secretary to consider whether weed should really still be treated in legal terms on a par with heroin and LSD. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
And we're back.
How's it feel?
Sunday night here on Free Talk Live. Feels good to be here with you guys. The captain is out tonight. He had some family issues to deal with this weekend. And here tonight it's Ian.
It's Nikki.
And Rich.
Phones are open. You can bring up anything that you want here. The number is 603-283-6160. I did a little bit of digging, talked to Bonnie during the break there about the whole question of why do so many Christians get behind this idea of sending government, taxpayer money to Israel and supporting whatever kind of bombings and destruction that the Israeli government is involved with.
Massacring the Palestinians.
Right, against the Palestinians, locking them into a certain area of land, preventing them from getting any kind of construction materials to fix their homes after they've been bombed. I mean, there's just horrible things.
Sniping the children.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot we don't even know about that goes on over there. But so why would they do that? How can someone who purports to be like Jesus, right? Because that's what a Christian is supposed to be. It's supposed to be someone who emulates Christ, who is supposedly the Prince of Peace. So how can someone like that support such a warmongering government? Now, according to the Washington Post, they say that about half of evangelicals, this is a story from 2018, support Israel because they believe it is important for fulfilling the end times prophecies.
Oh, there you go.
So as I was suggesting, I just didn't remember the details. They interviewed a pastor, Robert Jeffries, who I guess is some big deal in Christianity or something like that. And Jeffries, let's see. Oh, actually, this is University of North Texas professor Elizabeth Oldmixon told Vox, quote, "The tenet of Christian Zionism is that God's promise of the Holy Land to the Jews is eternal. It's not just something in antiquity. When we talk about the Holy Land," she says, "God's promise of the Holy Land, we're talking about real estate on both sides of the Jordan River. So the sense of a greater Israel and expansionism is really important to this community," meaning the evangelicals. Jerusalem is just central to that. It's viewed as a historical and biblical capital, unquote. So
and the way to get that is violence
and killing.
People.
Yeah,
okay,
apparently.
all right, just making sure.
Because that's what Jesus wants, right? And the story goes on here, and I haven't had a chance to read through it, but that's just a little bit about what they believe. They believe in the expansion of Israel. So I guess its current form is not good enough in order to trigger the end times. And Bonnie mentioned something about temples or whatever. So like there's certain real estate there that they want to make sure is in the hands of the Jews, because that's what God said had to happen in order for Jesus to come back and, trigger the rapture and take them all to heaven or whatever it is.
This is all in the magical book.
Yeah,
written by the goat farmers thousands of years ago. Okay.
You think that if this was real, it wouldn't be such a, it would just happen, right? They wouldn't have to do all of these things. Yeah, it really feels like it's being forced. It's like, well, we have to murder you or else Jesus won't come back.
Well, God can't be everywhere, so he needs his boots on the ground, people to do the dirty work for him.
We're going to go to your calls and thoughts here. We have Lee on the line, listening online. Lee, you're on Free Talk Live, calling from New Hampshire.
Hello, and we're back.
Welcome.
All right, so anyhow, the Bible's, it's written there, those who bless Israel shall be blessed. And there's so many verses. I mean, that's just in the Torah, the first 5 books. When you read it, and I've read it many times, many times, you start realizing, at least for me, I realize most people don't believe that there is a creator and don't realize that we're going to stand before him. But one day, I'll have to stand before him also and give an account, and he tells us that those who bless Israel shall be blessed. Now, Israel, got their own problems. They really do. Every person on this planet is sinning according to God, including myself. And we're all going to have to give account. Israel has to answer to him for these things.
Can we clarify something, though? There's a difference between the people in the landmass that is commonly referred to as Israel, the humans who are there just living out their lives, and the people calling themselves the state or the nation of Israel, right? So what's not clear, I think, to a lot of people is if it does say in the Bible the phrase that you were talking about of, sorry, you're going to have to say it again, I don't recall it, but
those who bless, referring to Abraham, those who bless you,
those who bless Israel. That doesn't necessarily say they're talking about the state of Israel, the government goons who are destroying human life, because that's not something that should be blessed, right? Like the actual rocketing and violence against explosions against other human beings, that's not a blessing. Am I right about that? Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, war is war, and that's a whole nother, you're right. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, I don't get the whole thing where people think Jesus takes sides on war, right? Like that's another common belief amongst the Christians. It's like, well, God's on our side.
He flipped over the tables at whatever, and the money collectors and tax people.
You could take it with Russia and Ukraine. I mean, there's Christians on both sides, and I'm not saying that they all are, but they're fighting. And one is fighting for their country, and the other one's fighting for they're both fighting for their own country. But, that does happen. Unfortunately, we've had it throughout.
In my opinion,
history.
A real Christian would refuse to fight unless it was in self-defense.
And that's a thing of your opinion, but each person has to make their own decision.
Well, I think Jesus would think that.
Right. What would Jesus do?
You see, you're getting to a whole nother thing, what he would do. I mean, we're supposed to, in Romans, we're supposed to actually obey the government, whether I like it or not.
Romans 13, it's there.
What a load.
And when
Gee, who do you
Paul
think translated that one?
Right. And when Paul wrote that, Nero was the government at that time, and he was killing Christians. So I mean,
that's insane.
Like it? No, but
that just goes to show that whatever he wrote was clearly mistranslated, was completely misunderstood. Lee, thanks for the call tonight. I do appreciate hearing from you. Let's go to Gigi. She's on the line in South Carolina. Gigi, you're on Free Talk Live.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to speak to everyone.
Thanks.
Me being of both a Sephardic as well as an Ashkenazi background, I learned as a child the emphasis on education was so highly encouraged in both cultural backgrounds of my Jewish heritage, and learning about the importance of you come as an immigrant to America, you better be American and blend in, forget the old religious ways, they're outdated, go and study, and become something, because back in Europe, you were not permitted to own property, own land, be a member of the Guild Society, so you better make something of your life and be successful. Mm-hmm. In terms of Paul and his comment on
Hold on, before you go on to that point, Gigi, so what you're saying is the fact of being an immigrant led to greatness for Jewish people because they were driven.
Of education, emphasized culturally. Yes,
and I think
sir.
That's true, by the way, of a lot of immigrants to the United States. The average immigrant,
ethnic communities, absolutely.
The average immigrant in the United States, or at least the ones that have come here to make a better life for themselves, they are more likely to be entrepreneurs than native-born people. Okay. They're more likely to have successful businesses because they care about that.
Educated men and women, yes.
I might take a little issue with the blending into American thing because at least in New York, right, the Orthodox Jewish community is pretty well insulated from the rest of society.
Yes, sir. I agree with you. The ultra-Orthodox choose not to assimilate. So in that respect, I agree with you.
But that doesn't mean they haven't been tremendously successful at the same time.
Yeah, they're very successful, but they did not blend at all. In fact, during the COVID lockdowns,
Well, I think that's great. Honestly, I don't think you have to blend in order to be. You shouldn't have to be in order to be successful. No. And Chinatowns and Little Italies and examples of where people didn't change and they created carved out a spot for themselves and managed to make that work.
Comfortable with the comment that Paul, the gentleman from New Jersey who called in just a while ago, when he, and I'm paraphrasing the gentleman, I'm not quoting him, what I took from his comment made me uncomfortable.
All right, I'm not sure what you're referring to, so hang on, Gigi. We'll bring you back so you can explain what it was that he said, because I don't even remember at this point what it was. So you'll have to recap that for us, Gigi, and what it was difficult to hear. The number is 603-283-6160. You can join the show here on Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing. To be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Do you ever say, I could care less, when you really mean the opposite? You mean to say, I couldn't care less. It's a common mistake. You are judged by how you speak, especially if you're looking for work, with so many more applicants than openings now. But even if you're not, avoiding common misstatements will help you make the most of the dozens of conversations and transactions that crowd your daily routine. So whatever you say, don't say whatever as a single word sentence. It's the most annoying expression in the American English language, according to a recent poll. And avoid cliches like the plague. Just kidding. But seriously, at the end of the day, you'll want to avoid this scenario, sounding like everyone else. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
And we're back.
We are back with Free Talk Live, and the phones are open should you wish to join us. The number is 603-283-6160, live Sunday show. 603-283-6160. We started out talking about Kanye West and him being banned and or restricted from mega tech social media platforms. Of course, we've talked also over the years about independent options, alternatives to these mega platforms, and we're running one of them. So if Kanye wants to come on over to social.freetalklive.com, we'd love to have him. It'd be great.
That would blow up your servers if he showed up and brought everyone with him.
We'd have to do a serious upgrade, I suspect. But we actually have upgraded that server recently, so I don't know what it can handle, but probably not Kanye. But still, give it a shot, Kanye. Give it a shot there. It's social.freetalklive.com. You can sign up there. It runs on our server. It's decentralized. It's open source. It is a Mastodon-based system. It's the same system being used by a variety of other, controversial independent sites. Even Trump launched a Mastodon-based system, his thing called Truth Social. They kind of reframed it and did a little programming tweak to it, but ours is pretty pure Mastodon. You can find it at social.freetalklive.com. There are apps available for our site as well. It's open source, right? So anybody who wants to can throw together an app for Mastodon. So it's pretty sweet. If you don't like app A, you can try app B, C, and D, and maybe even E. There's a bunch of them out there, so give it a shot.
I've said it before, the future will be federated, because that's the only way to keep that free speech flow going and not get shut down by those bigger corporations.
Yeah, I like it. You do have a lot more freedom to speak when you're on social.freetalklive.com. I'm not saying you have to shut down your other accounts. The best way to do it is to build your Mastodon presence simultaneously as you still have these other big platforms. And that way, if they pull the plug on you, you're still over on Mastodon, and people that are following you there are uninterrupted. So we're going to continue with more of your calls and thoughts here. I did pull up another story from Newsweek just to try to find a little bit more information about what it is that these Christians believe about Israel and why they're so vehement in support of this particular state that is murdering people. And that's clearly not a Christ-like thing to be doing, but they do it anyway. So why? What's their reason for it? According to a Newsweek story published in 2018, headline, Trump will start the end of the world, claim evangelicals who support him. They say that Jerusalem has a central role as the city of prophecy and the place where the end times play out. According to the prophecy, supposedly, a 1,000-year period of peace must be followed by 7 years of tribulation, during which wars, disease, and natural disasters will lay waste to the earth. In the book of Revelation, Israel is described as a nation that exists during the time of tribulation, and Jerusalem's Jewish temple is resurrected during this period. The last temple was destroyed around 70 AD, and today there is a mosque on the Temple Mount, where the two previous temples are believed to have stood. Evangelicals believe that a unified Israel with control over Jerusalem will facilitate the construction of a new Jewish temple and then set the groundwork for the end of times.
So how big does Israel have to be then? Because it seems like it's ever expanding well beyond whatever borders you would need to say nope, this is a country.
Well, there's also theory that that's not even the correct Israel.
Okay.
That Israel is somewhere else and they picked the wrong spot.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, so I don't know enough about the geography to know where this temple was. Whether it's still in their control, and if it is, it must not be, right? Because they're not building the new temple there or whatever.
Well, okay, right? And if it's not, let's just assume for a moment that it's not in their control. They've been able to amass so much more landmass in that general region over the years that you would think a concerted effort on that temple property would be enough to reclaim it, right? Stop bombing the children out, on the West Bank or wherever, and just send everyone to control the temple.
Yeah, just go build your temple.
Yeah.
It's very strange. If you want to comment, you're welcome to join us here. We do have Gigi on the line still in South Carolina, and she wanted to comment on a previous caller. Gigi, can you recap your recollection of what he said?
I do agree with Richie's comment. It's not only a violation of international law, but it's utterly disgusting to behave in such a manner as the Israeli military authorities have been. So in that regard, I concur with Richie's comment. What I take umbrage with is the gentleman from New Jersey. I believe he identified himself as Paul, and I think we have to be very cautious regarding generalizations and stereotypes about any ethnic or religious minority.
Or majority. I mean, stereotypes are there for a reason, though. Like, they don't come out of nowhere by oppressors.
Well, it makes me very uncomfortable.
Well, let's clarify something. Stereotyping isn't racism necessarily.
Myself.
Right.
It's not racism to say a thing that is an observation about a certain group of people. It's racism. Now, maybe it is under the new definition of racism.
It's definitely under the new definition.
Under the classic dictionary definition of racism, racism is just a belief that one race is superior or inferior to another race.
Well, I don't consider myself a race as a Jewish woman.
Okay.
I consider myself spiritually a Jewish woman, not racially.
What do you know, if anything, about this Temple Mount, this site that
you
is so...
read from Newsweek is right on key.
Okay.
The Orthodox Jews, the ultra-Orthodox that Richie was referring to, as well as the Christian Zionists that Pastor Jeffries made mention of that you quoted in another article, they are on key. Why do you think the moral majority and Jerry Falwell were bosom buddies with Menachem Begin, and so many members of AIPAC are evangelical Christians?
Okay, but I just don't know enough about this place. I mean, where is it basically right now in relation to Israel? Is it under their control or not?
Yes, it is. And that's why we always see incredible violence, frustration, and so-called skirmishes between Palestinians going to pray at the mosque and the Israeli military. And it's a disgrace that it should take place. People should be able to go and worship whoever they are, whatever their background is.
Hold on, just to clarify, is this in the Palestinian territory or is it outside of that?
She just said it was under Israeli control.
I understand that, but
it's under Israeli military control. We need
Palestine's under Israeli control too, isn't it?
Yes, sir. I agree.
But do the Israeli? But they're locked off, right? Palestine is sort of blocked
they're
off.
Locked off. And let's be specific, so it's understood and it's thorough. Palestinians, by and large, are locked off economically as well as spiritually.
So I want to clarify then. This mount is currently under Israeli control. However, there's still a mosque on top of it that the Palestinians wish to go to pray to and are prevented to.
They're not always able to comfortably, and they're not always able to peacefully.
But Israel could mount a defensive with all the funding and weaponry and soldiers that they have to just defend this mount sufficiently to knock down the mosque and build a temple.
And it's been done before, and in my personal opinion, it's wrong. You don't block entrance to a church, a mosque, or a synagogue, or a Buddhist temple, or a Hindu shrine, or a Sikh temple. And that's why I am very happy that I am living in this country. Ain't nobody going to prevent me from going where I need to if I want to pray.
I'm not making a moral judgment on it. I'm just saying strategically.
I understand you, and I agree with you, Richie.
Strategically, they could defend that small parcel of land sufficiently to build their own temple.
Can't they just build a temple next to the mosque? Can it not be on this?
No, because they want to procure and control original territory. And this is why evangelicals agree and support, because they say it's original territory. But I also agree with what you said, Ian. A Christian would not react that way and say, let's go to war. Let's get those bombs going.
Yeah, how about peace? How about we say, hey, let's support the mosque and build something right nearby, and that way the Muslims can have their mosque on the holy site, the Christians can have their temple, the Jews can have whatever it is Jews have.
Well, didn't President Abraham Lincoln say years ago, Jerusalem is an international city for all. Why is that not still understood?
Thank you, Gigi, for the
because the Israeli military.
Yeah, they clearly don't want to coexist.
Nope. Thank you for the call tonight. And what would Jesus do? The number 603-283-6160. I suspect it would not be dropping bombs on people. Just going out on that limb here. Hour number 2 is on the way. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And a week that began with Russian President Vladimir Putin formally annexing 4 parts of Ukraine ended with President Biden telling a group of Democratic Party funders that he fears the possibility of Armageddon if the Russian leader uses nuclear weapons. The White House says there's been no change in America's nuclear posture, despite growing threats from figures close to the Russian leader. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says no new intelligence has been gleaned, suggesting a nuclear strike is imminent.
No, the president was speaking about concerns about Putin's threats to use nuclear weapons, just as he did at the UN General Assembly. And we have done over the past few weeks, you have heard us say this over and over again. You've heard it from the National Security Advisor, how seriously we are taking this.
She again insisted that the US will never recognize the annexed Ukrainian regions as part of Russia. President Biden said the US is trying to determine what kind of off-ramp might entice Vladimir Putin to step back from the abyss. Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin insisted on Friday there's only one way out.
The way out of the conflict is for Russia to leave Ukraine. That's the way out of the conflict. Thank you.
There were 2 separate awful events in Asia over the past week. In Indonesia, at least 125 people were killed in a stampede at a soccer stadium after the police used tear gas to disperse fans who had poured onto the pitch. An internal police review described that decision as a mistake, saying no orders had been given to use the gas. Meanwhile, in Thailand, 37 people, including 20 children, were killed when a former police officer opened fire at a nursery school in the northeast of the country. He later killed himself. Reporter Tommy Walker in Bangkok covered that story.
It's rare to have mass shootings, but it looks like it's going to be Thailand's worst ever mass shooting. He was obviously on a rampage, and the Thai chief of police said that they believe that the gunman was on some form of amphetamine.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had another rough week. There were mixed reviews for her speech at the Conservative Party's annual conference, in which she insisted she can navigate the country through a winter of tempest and turmoil. The UK's National Grid, though, warned this week of possible 3-hour power cuts for homeowners as the winter advances. US President Joe Biden unveiled new moves on marijuana just 1 month ahead of crucial midterm elections.
No one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs.
He's pardoning thousands of marijuana convictions, targeting the racial disparity in prosecutions for possession, and ordering his health secretary to consider whether weed should really still be treated in legal terms on a par with heroin and LSD. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. US traders will have their attention turned squarely on fresh inflation data due out later this week. Investors and the Federal Reserve will be hoping that recent interest rate rises are starting to cool price pressures. With the preview from FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo.
Last month's Consumer Price Index figures revealed that inflation ticked up despite the Federal Reserve's aggressive moves to ease price pressures. On Thursday, September CPI figures are set to be released, and Wall Street will be hoping to see signs that the Fed's rate hikes are beginning to have the desired effect. On Wednesday, we also have the release of minutes from the last central bank meeting. Investors will be keen to assess the Fed's appetite for further rate hikes and whether recession fears are starting to influence their thinking.
The Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus on Friday. Two organizations, the Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties and Russia's Memorial, were honored, alongside jailed Belarusian activist Ales Bialyatsky. FSN's Sally Patterson had more on that story.
The Nobel Peace Prize recipients were praised for their efforts to document war crimes, human rights abuses and the abuse of power. Ales Bialyatsky has championed democracy in Belarus for decades. The Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties monitors political persecutions in occupied Ukraine, and the human rights organization Memorial was shut down earlier this year by the Supreme Court of Russia. Sally Patterson, London.
In the coming week, Airbus and Air France go on trial in Paris over a crash that claimed nearly 230 lives over the Atlantic in 2009. President Biden heads to Colorado to campaign in America's midterm elections, and the final hearing of the committee investigating the Capitol Hill riots will take place in Congress. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. Simon Marks reporting.
Shortly after accidentally clicking like on nearly 400 of his ex-girlfriend's Facebook photos earlier today, panicked area man Adam Nuensing spoke to Onion reporters about his mistake.
Damn it, I was just looking at one of Rebecca's Instagram photos that showed up on my newsfeed, and the next thing I know, I just liked every single photo that she posted over the last 4 years. I didn't mean to, but it just kind of happened.
The 28-year-old told reporters that he had browsed through 14 of his ex-girlfriend's photo albums while inadvertently clicking like on each and every picture, including dozens from her office picnic last fall, her trip to New York in 2010, and a photo of her and her first boyfriend from 2006.
I thought if I went back and clicked unlike on all those pictures that maybe she wouldn't get any notifications, but then I saw some other albums and I ended up liking 80 more photos and shared them on my wall. Shit.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
And we're back. Welcome to hour number 2 of the live Sunday edition of Free Talk Live. You can join the show and dial in. Bring up whatever's on your mind. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight it's Ian.
It's Nikki.
And Rich.
We're going to go back into your phone calls and thoughts, but to bring you up to speed if you're just tuning in, we started out by talking about Kanye West. He has been frozen and or banned from some major big tech social media platforms, starting with Instagram some number of days ago, and then he moved over to Twitter, and now Twitter has locked his account. We don't know if it's a 12-hour lockout, a 30-day, or whatever, but Twitter did confirm, according to an MSN post, that his account has been locked for some amount of time.
We're going DEFCON 3 on the Jews.
Death, D-E-A-T-H, Con 3. Now, you have to wonder, did he make a mistake? And does he not know that it's actually DEFCON, D-E-F-C-O-N? It's a military term.
Defense condition.
Yeah.
Death sounds better, I guess, for his purposes.
It definitely sounds more serious.
Sounds more dramatic.
Or maybe he's got a or speech to text, and it didn't understand what he's...
Whatever it is, he's definitely manic right now.
So we can continue on that discussion, and it led to a larger discussion about Israel and the huge support that the state of Israel has on behalf of various different people in the federal government, many of whom, evangelical Christians, for instance, believe it's some sort of like an end times prophecy to have the Christians, or the Jews, I guess, rather, in control of a certain temple in what I guess is part of Palestine, based on what Gigi was saying earlier. It's a very confusing situation, and one in which I just don't care about. Like, it's a half a world away to me. I do care about innocent people being bombed to death, and I think that's absolutely terrible what's happening over there, and that should be reason number one for these Christians to not support any state, let alone the state that's bombing
Even
children.
what you read earlier means that Christians today should not care at all. Because it said 1,000 years of peace followed by 7 years of turmoil, and none of them are going to be around for that 1,000 years of peace.
Right. Yeah. When's that going to start? Because it's not now. That's for sure. So we'll continue here. Jerome is on the line in South Carolina. Go ahead, Jerome.
Hey, is Kanye West still kissing up to Trump in the White House?
Trump's not in the White House right now.
Oh, depends on who you talk to.
Really? Oh, really?
Last I checked, it was Joe Biden that was in the White House, but
maybe physically.
Then why does Trump still think he's president? The election was stolen. It's rigged. Yeah, sure, right. And you can't provide any proof. Kanye West is an idiot, man. Come on. He needs to be committed. By the way, how's his marriage going these days?
I think he's broken up. Didn't they get a divorce?
He's dating someone new.
The Kim Kardashian, the meathead, two meatheads together now, they're separated.
Now, hold on. I just want to know, Jerome, if Kanye West supported Joe Biden or Barack Obama, would you call him a meathead?
No, I still call him an ally. A meathead.
You would?
Because he's a meathead. No matter who he supports, he's a meathead. He makes no sense. He said he's never read a book, okay?
Wow.
How do you get through school, man, without ever reading a book? That's what I heard a quote from him to do.
I don't believe that.
He never read a book.
That's crazy.
You ever heard him talk? He's a dummy. His music sucks. He's overrated. He's a dummy. He provides nothing.
Now, hold on.
If I could be that wealthy and have never read a book, I would take it.
Here's what I have to say about that, Jerome. I mean, as somebody who's not very familiar with his musical catalog, Bonnie has played some of it for me, and honestly, it doesn't do anything for me at all. I really don't care for Kanye West's music. I'm not a huge rap fan, but there's some rap that is good. It's listenable. You go back to the Sugar Hill Gang, for instance, some of the stuff from the 90s. I don't know what it's like today. I honestly don't.
It's bad.
I couldn't name two other current rappers. The other one I can think of is Puff Daddy, but that was from 2 decades ago, right? So,
well, but also in the Kanye mix, he was the one, Diddy is the one who Kanye said was sent by the Jews to try and convert him.
So yeah, but I'm with you on that, Jerome. As far as I don't really consider him to be particularly talented, but I don't think you can deny he can't be a fool. Right? You can't get to the level that he's at of success and be an idiot, can you?
He did something right along the line somehow.
Is Kim Kardashian rich?
Yeah.
I presume.
Now tell me what her talent is.
Well, she leaked a sex tape. That was her big business move.
Oh, yeah.
She's a rich hoe, right? That's her thing.
Look, I'm not in the...
She broke the internet. Remember that? There was her picture of her butt broke the internet. That's the only other thing she's known for.
I'm still trying to figure out what the hell her talent is. And as far as Herschel Walker goes, I
suspect her talents are things we can't talk about on the radio.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but the only reason she was popular because her dad was like OJ's attorney or part of that trial. Like it stems from that.
There's a winner. There's a winner. Her dad was OJ's apologist. There's a winner. Hey,
I'm just saying. If the Kardashian name wasn't already in the spotlight because of the OJ trial,
all right, so
Kim Kardashian would still be a nobody.
You mentioned this Herschel Walker guy, Jerome. I hadn't heard about him previously. He's been in the news recently. Is he like a sports star?
Also a football player.
Yeah, he was a football player in Georgia way back 30-something years ago.
What's the story with this guy?
40-something years
Why is he back in the news?
Because he's a politician now.
Well, he's their puppet. He's the latest Republican-created puppet, trying to win the Senate seat in Georgia. Except he's got a few problems, like he pays for abortions, but he's pro-life. How the hell can you be paying for abortions?
Wait a minute. Are you saying a politician is a hypocrite?
Donald Trump?
Hold on. Are you saying, Jerome, are you saying politicians can be hypocrites?
Are you saying Republicans can be hypocrites?
Yes, I am. Are you saying that all politicians can be hypocrites? Because that's what I believe.
Hey,
and they are.
You always tell me, Jerome, they all lie, Jerome.
They do, Jerome. And when you start to agree and understand that, when you can finally see the hypocrisy on the left as clearly as you can see the hypocrisy on the right, then you'll look back and you say, you know what, those guys on Free Talk Live, they were right all along about this stuff.
Hey, I can't. You know what I wish? I wish when Friday comes, you and I could sit down and watch the Raphael Warnock, Herschel Walker debate. Because, man, that's going to be must.
My God, I can't imagine watching a political debate unless it had a libertarian in it. If there's no Ron Paul, if there's no principled libertarian on the stage, I couldn't keep awake.
I will say this, then watch it with libertarians because the commentary from the peanut gallery could also be fun.
Thanks, Jerome, for the call tonight, man.
That's a good idea.
I appreciate hearing from you.
I've gone to the community center a number of times to watch the presidential debates, not because I care, but because who was there else watching it?
For the heckling, basically?
Of course.
Okay. Well, they can't hear you, but it could still be. I see what you're saying.
Well, I hear the crowd. I'm sitting in the crowd with the crowd that's heckling.
Yeah.
I'd rather see them get heckled on the stage. That would be a little more entertaining, but they'd probably kick you out. Yeah, they'd kick you out. All right, so we were talking about Kanye West. He's been banned from, apparently, Instagram. He has been restricted on Twitter. He hadn't been active, according to MSN, on Twitter in about 2 years and was greeted by Elon Musk once he returned to the platform. Of course, as you know, the news this week was that Elon Musk has now renewed his effort to try to buy Twitter. After originally wanting to buy Twitter, bidding on Twitter, Twitter initially refusing the bid, then begrudgingly accepting it, then Elon saying, no, never mind, too many bots, you guys aren't honest about the number of bots, so I'm backing out. Which was
all BS to begin with, because the whole reason he said he was going to buy it was to get rid of the bot problem, and he waived all due diligence in the process.
Did he waive due diligence on that? Okay, well, he said he was going to back out, and then Twitter sued him to force him to go through with the deal, and then rather than go to court at the last minute, basically, like a week before the trial was scheduled, Elon says, all right, I'll go ahead and buy it.
And even that trial, Elon supporters would claim was 4D chess to force Twitter into bringing forth the evidence of the bot problem.
That's what they said, but then what ended up happening was Twitter forced Elon to bring forth all his text messages. And now mainstream media has been digging through his texts with other big rich people or his supporters and stuff. So there's more coming up here about Kanye and Twitter, and your thoughts are welcome as well. Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Free Talk Live.
The amount of young people being brought up on criminal charges, sex offender charges, for taking nude photos of themselves and putting them online. It's just so sad to see these people having their lives just rolled right over the top of by these prosecutors that want to make it look like they're doing something good, but they're not doing anything that's helping anyone. There's no victim in this case. When you hear the term child pornography, what should come to mind, if anything, should be the idea of forcing children into sexual scenes and videotaping or photographing them.
Forcing children or somebody...
Even if it's a child forcing another child, I think the force is the issue there. If you're talking about a 15-year-old girl voluntarily choosing to take a nude photo of herself to send to her boyfriend or to post online, no one forced her to do that.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
And we're back.
Welcome back to the live Sunday episode of Free Talk Live. In the studio tonight, it's Ian.
It's Nikki.
And Rich.
Phones are open. If you want to join the program, you can bring up absolutely anything you want. We still haven't gotten to the mullet, the search for the best mullet, is it? Yeah, best mullet in America. So excluding the rest of the world. I don't know how many mullets are
I don't know if
there
you're going to get a greater mullet outside of America.
Yeah. It's kind of a classic American redneck southern thing. So there's somebody looking for that. We'll get into that story in a little bit. We've been talking about Kanye West. He's been kicked out of some of the major social media platforms for supposedly anti-Semitic posts. And we're going to continue with that discussion here. Of course, you're welcome to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. Our very own Mark Edge is going to be heading over to Prague in less than 2 weeks, I think, from now. It's October 21st through the 23rd. It's going to be the Free Cities Foundation's annual conference. It's called Liberty in Our Lifetime, and they're going to be discussing parallel structures for progress. They'll showcase autonomous cities and intentional communities that are springing up around the world and giving settlers the opportunities to live freer lives. So that sounds interesting to you. You can get a 20% discount by using our discount code, which is FTL20. Their website is lifetimeliberty.com, code FTL20. You'll save 20% on your tickets to Liberty in Our Lifetime. It's October 21st through the 23rd in Prague, lifetimeliberty.com. As we continue here, we're sharing with you the I guess whirlwind return that Kanye had to Twitter over the weekend. He's already restricted from the website after having been gone from the site for 2 years. He returned after Instagram apparently banned him, or restricted rather, his account. He returned to Twitter and was greeted by Elon Musk once he returned, with Musk saying, "Welcome back to Twitter, my friend." Apparently, within 12 hours from that time, Kanye was restricted from Twitter access for posting about what he calls DEFCON 3, that he will be going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. The full post, quote, "I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people." He writes that in all caps. "The funny thing is, I can't actually be anti-Semitic because black people are actually Jew also. You guys have toyed with me and tried to blackball anyone who ever opposes your agenda." Now, I don't want to jump to conclusions here. It looks bad on its face, given that he just cites all Jewish people. But it is hard to communicate in 280 characters or less, and that's all you have on Twitter. And, of course, now he's been suspended from Twitter, so he has no ability to clarify his statements.
He's also clearly not new to this, right? You don't put Jewish in all caps. You just put the 3 parentheses around whatever you're talking about, and everyone knows what you're talking about after that point.
I don't know this tactic.
Okay, never mind.
What is the 3 parentheses?
It's a dog whistle to indicate Jews.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, get with the times, people.
Well, because, look, I mean, we then talked about the fact that Jewish people are highly represented in certain areas, whether it be banking or Hollywood or politics. But that doesn't mean that all Jewish people are part of some grand conspiracy to rule the world. I mean, that's a ridiculous viewpoint. So it's hard to believe that that's what he believes, but maybe he does believe that. And it's not unheard of that there are, black racists that don't like Jewish people, right? Like that's a thing, isn't it?
Well, it doesn't make sense to say, "Oh, well, I can't be anti-Semitic because I'm black." Because black people aren't Jewish people. Like, those are two different things.
No, he claims they are Jews. Like, that's what he said. Like,
I know that's what he said, but it's wrong.
Why wouldn't they be? Wasn't Jesus black?
I mean, like, are we all Jewish, though? I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense.
Apparently, according to the
we're
DNA
all black
test,
and
I'm
we're
11%.
all Jewish.
I'm 11% Jewish.
All right. Well,
I don't think we're all Jewish because you can test at 0,
yeah.
I think. But
I've never been tested. And also, I don't... How do I want to put this without sounding like I'm defending Kanye West?
I'm going to defend his right to freedom of speech.
Okay.
Which obviously he is not on a free speech platform if he's on Twitter or Instagram, and they have the right to restrict people for whatever reasons they want to. But whether I agree with what Kanye says or I don't, and I don't agree with DEFCON 3 against Jewish people, he should have the freedom to say what he wants.
So the DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, if he feels that he's being attacked by certain people, and the people that he feels attacked by all happen to be Jewish, right? Then it stands to reason that he's not going DEFCON 3 on all of the Jews or everyone that identifies as Jewish,
right?
But that those are the ones that are attacking him, which is why he's going, on the attack or, to retaliate against those.
Well, and it would also stand to reason that if it's true that Jewish people are indeed overrepresented in Hollywood and the music industry, then he wouldn't be the success that he is if it weren't for some Jewish owner of an album label or whatever.
You know what I think this is? I think he loves attention.
Yes.
And putting Jewish people in all caps on Twitter, saying horrible things, getting kicked off of Twitter. That just gave him... I mean, we're talking about him on Free Talk Live right now.
Yeah.
This just gave him so much attention. Good attention, bad attention. It's all attention.
He, on Friday, posted a screenshot on Instagram showing text message between him and Sean Diddy Combs.
There you go.
Accusing Diddy of being controlled by Jewish people. This garnered a response from the American Jewish Committee, which slammed Ye for espousing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. It's unclear how long he won't have access to Twitter, as the platform's rules say it could place a user's profile in read-only mode for anywhere from 12 hours to 7 days,
and
depending
again,
on the violation.
That bolsters his claim a little bit, in my opinion.
That the Jews are in control? Or?
Well, no, because he's saying, like, I think Diddy has been sent by the Jews, right? And then the Jewish Anti-Defamation League just blasts him and says, well, you're racist against all Jews. And he didn't even say that. Right? He said, I think Diddy, specifically, one man, is being sent by Jewish people to do whatever it is. And then on the other side, the Jews are the ones saying, well, you're racist against Jews, against all Jews.
All right, and rather than have a conversation, the people in control of Instagram had it shut down.
Right.
They locked him down.
But did they shut down the Jewish Anti-Defamation League?
No, of course not.
Similar accusations?
No, but as you say, they've just sort of proved his point, or perhaps could be argued at least that. So Ye cannot tweet, retweet, or like any posts until the lockout lifts, but other users can still interact with his content. The offensive post has been removed from his Twitter profile. These outbursts come not even a week after he was captured wearing they called it racist, White Lives Matter shirt. I don't see how that's racist.
So is Black Lives Matter racist then?
They wouldn't say that, would they?
The claim has been made.
I'm going to say it's not racist to say that people's lives matter, whichever group or whatever you want to support. And obviously this is clear trolling on his part. And apparently the shirt he was wearing is reportedly had a picture of the Pope on the front. Did you hear this part?
I did not see that part.
I didn't see that. I only saw the back of it, though.
Right, which makes it even more confusing. Like, what does the Pope have to do with White Lives Matter? I don't get it. If you can clear it up for me, the number is 603-283-6160. Maybe it's just because he's, lost his mind and is not doing anything that makes any sense. He's crazy and has no one to tell him not to. What do you think? It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And a week that began with Russian President Vladimir Putin formally annexing 4 parts of Ukraine ended with President Biden telling a group of Democratic Party funders that he fears the possibility of Armageddon if the Russian leader uses nuclear weapons. The White House says there's been no change in America's nuclear posture, despite growing threats from figures close to the Russian leader. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says no new intelligence has been gleaned, suggesting a nuclear strike is imminent.
No, the president was speaking about concerns about Putin's threats to use nuclear weapons, just as he did at the UN General Assembly. And we have done over the past few weeks, you have heard us say this over and over again. You've heard it from the National Security Advisor, how seriously we are taking this.
She again insisted that the US will never recognize the annexed Ukrainian regions as part of Russia. President Biden said the US is trying to determine what kind of off-ramp might entice Vladimir Putin to step back from the abyss. Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin insisted on Friday there's only one way out.
The way out of the conflict is for Russia to leave Ukraine. That's the way out of the conflict. Thank you.
There were two separate awful events in Asia over the past week. In Indonesia, at least 125 people were killed in a stampede at a soccer stadium after the police used tear gas to disperse fans who had poured onto the pitch. An internal police review described that decision as a mistake, saying no orders had been given to use the gas. Meanwhile, in Thailand, 37 people, including 20 children, were killed when a former police officer opened fire at a nursery school in the northeast of the country. He later killed himself. Reporter Tommy Walker in Bangkok covered that story.
It's rare to have mass shootings, but it looks like it's going to be Thailand's worst ever mass shooting. He was obviously on a rampage, and the Thai chief of police said that they believe that the gunman was on some form of amphetamine.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had another rough week. There were mixed reviews for her speech at the Conservative Party's annual conference, in which she insisted she can navigate the country through a winter of tempest and turmoil. The UK's National Grid, though, warned this week of possible 3-hour power cuts for homeowners as the winter advances. US President Joe Biden unveiled new moves on marijuana just 1 month ahead of crucial midterm elections.
No one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs.
He's pardoning thousands of marijuana convictions, targeting the racial disparity in prosecutions for possession, and ordering his health secretary to consider whether weed should really still be treated in legal terms on a par with heroin and LSD. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
And we're back on the live Sunday edition of Free Talk Live. The number is 603-283-6160. Joining you in the studio, it's Ian.
It's Nikki.
And Rich.
Talking about the controversy, the dust-up revolving around Kanye West. Normally, he's not really worth talking about because he's just a musical artist, and there's a dime a dozen of those guys out there. But he's every now and then he'll do something that's somewhat controversial and gets himself into the news for other reasons, whether they be his political opinions or just his bizarre, confusing opinions, which is kind of what we're talking about here. Some people are saying he's a racist, and maybe he is. I don't know. At this point, he's been restricted off of Instagram and Twitter, so any chance he had to express himself further on the controversial posts that he's been making recently are completely squelched. So
we should also say that black and conservative, right, shouldn't be mutually exclusive, and it shouldn't be that big of a deal to begin with. And yet that's what brought it out initially with the MAGA hat wearing and the...
How many black people are actually conservative? Because as I understand it, there's a fair number of them that are.
I know a ton of black people that are conservatives.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. So again, if you want to comment here, the number 603-283-6160. He got in hot water before he was banned from, or restricted, I guess, on Instagram. Now restricted on Twitter for what may be as long as a week. The first thing that really got people riled up was he had a White Lives Matter shirt on, and there was a lot of photos of the backside of this shirt where he was standing with Candace Owens wearing a similar shirt. But then we found out later what was on the front side of the shirt. Apparently it's an image of a pope called Juan Pablo II. And according to a story at hitc.com explaining this particular shirt, apparently it was also known as Pope John Paul. So this person was referred to in a couple of different ways. He was born in Poland and was the pope from 1978 until he died in 2005 and subsequently made into a saint. And I guess Kanye already named one of his albums The Life of Pablo and recorded the track called Saint Pablo. So apparently he's kind of got a thing for this particular pope. and that would be why he had the shirt on. And I'm guessing the whole White Lives Matter thing is just to troll and set people off, because he knew he set people off. Like you were saying, Nikki, he likes the attention.
Yeah.
He got a lot of it when he put a MAGA hat on a few years ago, and he's getting the same kind of attention now.
Well, it's marketing and advertising,
Yeah.
you know?
All these
attention
companies-
equals money.
Right. All these companies are marketing his product for him, basically. And now, as you said, I think it was during the break, you looked up the Pope shirt, and you can buy the thing. You know, so whether he's getting a cut off of selling the Pope shirts or not, who knows? He probably is.
Smart.
It wouldn't surprise me if
Well,
he were.
it's important to not become irrelevant. So as he ages and as a lot of new, younger artists get in the scene, you have to stay relevant.
Stay on top of the game. Yeah. I don't think there's much else to say about Mr. West, but if you want to comment, the number is 603-283-6160. Let's go into the hard news.
Oh my goodness,
Richie,
please!
You've got it. You've got a breaking story for us here tonight.
The irony of this, inside the search for the best mullet of America, is that when we started discussing this, come to find out, Nikki pays attention to this.
I do, actually. I don't like sports, but the Mullet Championship is something I absolutely pay attention to
So this
and
isn't
take seriously.
the first time. They've done this more than once.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
Yearly, annual.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like she follows pages on my. I don't even do that.
Well, so I got turned on to it by they had someone posted in a Facebook group that I'm in. It was the kids championship, and it was just so cute. So I started following their actual website, and they just had the adult. The women's and the women's.
Wait, there's a women's mullet championship
oh, yeah.
too?
They're
Oh,
less
my God.
impressive.
Yeah.
I've seen some better like women with mullets. The 8 that they picked weren't as impressive in my opinion, but
I can't
thing
even
you're not a
imagine
judge.
being impressed by a woman with a mullet. That sounds absolutely awful. It's just bad. Now, isn't it harder now to find people with mullets than it was, say, in the 1980s or the 90s? I feel like mullets there was a time for them.
Yeah.
Right? Like where a lot of people had them.
I
And
think
that may
that
not be the case now.
I would assume the 80s was
Right.
that time period.
Billy Ray Cyrus, of course, was a huge star.
He's the king of all the mullets. Like king for life of the mullets.
One of the most noteworthy. I think he finally shaved it too, though, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
For me, I grew up and still do enjoy like professional wrestling.
Okay.
And so in those 80s, early 90s, that was like the hairdo of the popular wrestlers.
Sure.
But I've never had a mullet. So never rocked it.
All
Got
right.
the long hair now.
You got
but
long hair. You can make it happen.
I could. Not going to happen. Like no desire at all. But
You could though.
I could. I absolutely could. And you could too because your hair is longer than mine.
Yeah, I could.
Was it just a shaved around the sides? Is that? It's been so long.
Yeah,
since
it's like shorter on the top, business in the front, party in the back.
right, long in the back.
Long in the
That's
back,
what it is.
yeah.
Okay.
On the steps of City Hall just north of Dallas, Pony by Genuine oozed from speakers as 14 men tossed and bucked their mullets before a panel of judges and a crowd peppered with even more mullets in hopes of making the final round of this year's USA Mullet Championship. Up for consideration were tightly coiled mullets and beach wave mullets, weedy mullets, and mullets cascading down past shoulder blades. Some were uncombed, while others were glistened with product and perspiration. One mullet was graying, and 2 featured the shape of Texas, shaved into one side, and the American flag on the other.
See, those guys knew their audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Of the 14 mullets which were chosen from the initial pool of 30 applicants, one would go on to join a group of 25 that featured some of the lushest, wackiest, and most extravagant mullets in the country. Some in the top 25 advanced from other live competitions in places including Pueblo, Colorado, Buffalo, New York, and
okay.
Indianapolis.
So this is the finals then.
This is the national championships. Others won online votes or were selected as finalists by special guest judges, including retired NFL defensive end Jared Allen and comedian Theo Vaughn, a former contestant on MTV's Road Rules. A champion mullet will be crowned in an online vote that ends Tuesday. When was this article dated? Yeah, this is from Saturday, so this coming Tuesday.
Get your votes in now,
yes.
people.
The winning hairstyle will represent the best of about 600 total mullets in this year's competition, which was free to enter. Hopefuls just had to have a supply headshots in addition to bragging rights, The victor will receive prizes that include $2,500 and a pair of sunglasses from Pit Viper, a competition sponsor.
That's awesome. So it's mulletchamp.com if you want to vote. Vote for my boy Buddy Campbell.
Why? What do you like about this guy?
I love this guy. I don't know. I'm in a Facebook group with him, so we've had some discourse. And
really
he's funny.
are into this. Okay. In a group. Wow.
As soon as we started talking about it, she's like, oh, I'm in the group.
So you like his personality in addition to the mullet?
Yeah. So there's a Facebook group called Rate My Mullet.
Yeah. Okay.
And I forget how I even found this. It was one Sunday night, we were sitting around, and this is how this all started, like a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah.
That's it? Just sitting around and Facebook mullets?
I forget. I think someone sent it to me. I don't remember.
The contest or the group with the guy?
It was a photo of the kids' championship. So it was like first place, second place, and third place. And I just thought it was the funniest thing. So I sent it to my sister, and it turns out her husband had already been following it. So yeah, it's a big thing.
A big deal.
It's a thing. Yeah.
And what was the website for people to vote?
Mulletchamp.com.
Mulletchamp.com. All right. And do you have to choose between a bunch of them? Or they narrowed it down?
The 25. We're at the top 25 now. So
that's still a lot.
Until Tuesday.
Okay.
According to competitors in the Louisville qualifying event September 23rd, there are spoils beyond cash and swag. Among them,
the groupies.
Sticking it to your boss. Daniel Beecher, 37, who lives in League City, Texas, works at Perry's Steakhouse and Grill, an upscale restaurant where he's forbidden to wear his hair down. Before competing in the event, Beecher told his boss, if I take home nationals, I'm not going to hide the flow anymore. He recalled adding, they're on board.
Really?
Well, if you keep bringing that
up.
Yeah, if he wins.
All right. The number here is 603-283-6160. You can join the program. You can share your thoughts on whatever happens to be on your mind. Coming up, there's a jet fuel contamination issue in Hawaii. Nikki's got that story. You can share your thoughts on anything here on Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
And we're back.
Back with more Free Talk Live here on the Sunday episode. Phones are still open, of course. You can bring up anything. The number 603-283-6160, whether it's the Mullet Championships that are going on as we speak.
Who's your guy? Plug him one more time.
Buddy Champ, I think. Buddy Campbell.
Mulletchamp.com is the website where apparently you can participate in the 2022 main event, spelled M-A-N-E. Very, very cute. Free to, I guess, play in this thing and choose your winner.
Clear your cache and vote often.
Yeah, I don't know how easy it is to spam this one, but leave it to the internet. They'll figure out a way. You can join us here. The number 603-283-6160. We're going to go back to your phone calls and thoughts. In fact, Major Payne might know a thing or two about the mullet. Major, calling from Michigan.
Yeah, I'm confused about how this thing ever got named. A mullet is a fish.
It is.
I mean, the fish head do? Come on, give me a break. Where'd this thing come from? When my kid was little, like back in the 80s, all the little kids wanted to have a tail.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That little tuft of hair that hangs long down the middle of your back.
And the rat tail.
He was only about 8-10 years old, so he was still, ascertainable, so to speak.
All right,
so
well, I got to answer your question here, Major. According to Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt if you want to, but they say, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, the use of the term mullet to describe this hairstyle was, quote, apparently coined and certainly popularized by American hip-hop group the Beastie Boys.
Really? Wow, I didn't know that.
And they say that the Beastie Boys used mullet and mullet head as epithets in their 1994 song Mullet Head, combining it with a description of the haircut. But didn't it exist long prior to that? It just didn't have...
Didn't have a name.
I didn't know the... Wow, that's news to me.
Description of the haircut. Quote, number 1 on the side and don't touch the back. Number 6 on the top and don't cut it, whack, Jack. They expounded on the subject at length in a 6-page article entitled Mulling Over the Mullet in issue number 2 of their magazine, Grand Royale, offering a selection of alternative names for the cut, including hockey player haircut and soccer rocker.
Nice.
Cool.
So now you know.
All right. Well, I can give myself a segue here because a mullet is a fish. Have you guys dealt with the news from the Bering Sea here?
No.
Have you talked about those 2 Russians? Yeah, fleeing Putin's draft.
Oh,
yeah. They sailed across the Bering Straits, ended up on some little Alaskan island in an Inuit settlement, and now they're in Anchorage seeking asylum.
Really?
There's been a handful of draft dodgers out of Russia.
Understandable.
Those 2 specifically made it to Alaska. Others have made it to like Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan and
Poland and elsewhere. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, they're getting out any way they can. The
Absolutely.
rats are fleeing the burning ship.
I can't blame anybody for wanting to avoid going to a completely, pointless war.
No. Putin's a maniac.
Well, and so is Zelensky.
Right, because he prevented it too.
And now you got Zelensky calling for preemptive strikes, which he's now walked back, by the way, later on, saying, I just meant sanctions, preemptive sanctions, not actual, dropping bombs on Russia.
It's it's amazing. Go ahead, Major.
You never realize your tongue's too long until you went ahead and stepped on it.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone's all up in arms, lack of a pun there, about Putin and his nuclear option.
Yeah.
Right. But at one point in time, the Obama administration, right, they asked him, is the nuclear option available? And Obama very subtly said, all options are on the table.
Yep.
Like, so you mean this could be a nuclear thing? And Obama said, all options are on the table.
Thanks,
so
Major.
This is not new news, right? Politicians levy out the nuclear option whenever things get
it's
hairy.
Convenient. For sure.
But it should be a thing where it then brings you to the negotiating table, right, to figure out not the nuclear option on how to resolve the conflict.
Well, of course, this guy, and thank you, Major, for the call tonight, the Zelensky is refusing to negotiate with Putin. He will not even sit down with him to talk.
Well, all right then.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to talk, right, this is the thing that I maintain stems through all of humanity, right? The violence is always on the table in some form or fashion.
Sure.
And what we do as a polite society is try everything else before it gets to the violence. So if negotiating, if you don't want to get to the violence, you sit and you negotiate.
Politicians don't like doing that, though.
Governments aren't polite.
I get it.
They don't care.
Understood. But then that's when you escalate to the violence.
And that's what they've done.
That's what they always do.
Right. Because that's what means more power for them. This guy doesn't care. Zelensky, Putin, they don't care about the lives involved. They just care about control.
Yep.
Putin wants control over eastern Ukraine. Yeah. Ukraine wants control over eastern Ukraine. It doesn't matter what the people of eastern Ukraine think about it, even though it looks like, by all evidence, they would like to rather be either independent or join Russia. The rest of Ukraine, the western side of it, doesn't want to acknowledge that. The rest of the Western world doesn't want to acknowledge that. No one's willing to come to a compromise, so therefore it's going to be dead bodies.
But if it gets to the nuclear option, then you're ruling over a nuclear wasteland. Yeah. And I don't know what's the benefit of that is.
Yeah, that's a great point.
To some extent, everyone knows that, right? Like that's why no one goes with that option, and it just gets talked about. Thank goodness, thankfully.
But usually the talking about it leads to the talking about it, right? Like if you go
peace talks, you mean?
Right. Like you can't. Like, how much credibility does Putin lose if he goes like, if you don't come to the table, we're going to nuke you, and Zelensky goes like, well, we're not coming to the table, and then Putin goes, well, I can't really push the button.
Well, Putin hasn't said that.
Okay.
Right. Putin has only said, and I've listened to one of his speeches in the last couple of weeks. The perspective that he has is, we will use whatever force is necessary, including nuclear, to defend ourselves. So that means it's a response to an attack.
Okay.
Now the question then becomes, when Ukraine attacks the eastern side of Ukraine, which Putin is now calling Russia because of the recent vote that happened, will that require a nuclear response? And I think that would also require Ukraine to drop a nuke first in order for there to be a nuclear response from Putin. Because until then, Putin's likely just going to keep amping up the number of troops that he sends in there. That's why all these people are running to other areas, because they don't want to get sent there. And there's now been apparently 200,000 reservists that have been called into active duty in Russia.
So, but again, the nuclear thing is on the table.
It always is.
Always is. Yeah. But then how do you resolve it? Like if you don't
massive worldwide destruction is the way that resolves if somebody triggers a
before that, right? If you don't come to the negotiating table and either allow that side of the eastern part of Ukraine to annex to Russia or become independent or whatever, right? Then you can't say we're going to use nukes, not get the resolution you want, and then not use the nukes.
Well, you can, because they haven't said they're going to use nukes necessarily in every circumstance. They're there as a last resort.
Understood. But you just said if Ukraine attacks, that's the threshold.
It may be.
Maybe.
That's not clear, right?
Right.
Like the statement is very nebulous. The statement is, we got it in our back pocket if we need to use it, basically, is what they're saying. And we will use it, is what they're saying.
A lot of countries do.
So hopefully it won't come to that, but yeah, they're not coming to the table, because if Zelensky comes to the table and negotiates some sort of peace, then that's the end of the billions upon billions of dollars that, and probably euro, I don't know how much the EU is sending, but we know that the U.S. taxpayers are on the hook for tens of billions of dollars, maybe even over $100 billion. I don't know what the current total is, but he can't end the war, because then it ends the gravy train.
It's a money laundering war.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, the lives don't matter. What matters is the warmongering state, and that's what's always mattered, and that's what the U.S. wants, and that's what the European Union wants. And it doesn't matter to them that their people are going to freeze this winter because they can't get the gas from Russia that they previously got. It's not looking good.
Yeah.
There was just a headline this last week that Germany has not cut back, despite them being ordered to cut back by like 10 to 15% on their energy usage to conserve the natural gas storage that they have, because they built up a storage for the wintertime, but they've not cut back. The people in their homes are using at a higher rate than they've used on average in the last 5 years.
It's going to be a cold winter.
Yes.
Well, they're also moving back to wood burning.
Well, they're going to have to. I mean,
understood.
But it's like, do you have a wood stove in your apartment and wherever these people are in Germany?
Can you have a wood stove in your apartment?
Because there's a lot of places, if you live in the city, you don't have a wood stove.
No. And
some people that live in more rural areas might already have one.
Probably.
Where are the environmentalists standing on that?
I don't know. And how much wood can they use up, right? Like, there wasn't a high demand for wood before, but now there is. So we're going to see the wood prices do in that case. That's going up too, right? The number here is 603-283-6160. Hour number 3 is on the way. We're going to check in with the jet fuel controversy contaminating some of the water in Hawaii. That's on the way in Hour 3 here on Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And a week that began with Russian President Vladimir Putin formally annexing 4 parts of Ukraine ended with President Biden telling a group of Democratic Party funders that he fears the possibility of Armageddon if the Russian leader uses nuclear weapons. The White House says there's been no change in America's nuclear posture, despite growing threats from figures close to the Russian leader. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says no new intelligence has been gleaned, suggesting a nuclear strike is imminent.
No, the president was speaking about concerns about Putin's threats to use nuclear weapons, just as he did at the UN General Assembly. And we have done over the past few weeks, you have heard us say this over and over again. You've heard it from the National Security Advisor, how seriously we are taking this.
She again insisted that the US will never recognize the annexed Ukrainian regions as part of Russia. President Biden said the US is trying to determine what kind of off-ramp might entice Vladimir Putin to step back from the abyss. Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin insisted on Friday there's only one way out.
The way out of this conflict is for Russia to leave Ukraine. That's the way out of the conflict. Thank you.
There were 2 separate awful events in Asia over the past week. In Indonesia, at least 125 people were killed in a stampede at a soccer stadium after the police used tear gas to disperse fans who had poured onto the pitch. An internal police review described that decision as a mistake, saying no orders had been given to use the gas. Meanwhile, in Thailand, 37 people, including 20 children, were killed when a former police officer opened fire at a nursery school in the northeast of the country. He later killed himself. Reporter Tommy Walker in Bangkok covered that story.
It's rare to have mass shootings, but it looks like it's going to be Thailand's worst ever mass shooting. He was obviously on a rampage, and the Thai chief of police said that they believe that the gunman was on some form of amphetamine.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had another rough week. There were mixed reviews for her speech at the Conservative Party's annual conference, in which she insisted she can navigate the country through a winter of tempest and turmoil. The UK's National Grid, though, warned this week of possible 3-hour power cuts for homeowners as the winter advances. US President Joe Biden unveiled new moves on marijuana just 1 month ahead of crucial midterm elections.
No one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs.
He's pardoning thousands of marijuana convictions, targeting the racial disparity in prosecutions for possession, and ordering his health secretary to consider whether weed should really still be treated in legal terms on a par with heroin and LSD. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. US traders will have their attention turned squarely on fresh inflation data due out later this week. Investors and the Federal Reserve will be hoping that recent interest rate rises are starting to cool price pressures. With the preview from FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo.
Last month's Consumer Price Index figures revealed that inflation ticked up despite the Federal Reserve's aggressive moves to ease price pressures. On Thursday, September CPI figures are set to be released, and Wall Street will be hoping to see signs that the Fed's rate hikes are beginning to have the desired effect. On Wednesday, we also have the release of minutes from the last central bank meeting. Investors will be keen to assess the Fed's appetite for further rate hikes and whether recession fears are starting to influence their thinking.
The Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to human rights activists from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus on Friday. 2 organizations, the Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties and Russia's Memorial, were honored, alongside jailed Belarusian activist Ales Bialyatsky. FSN's Sally Patterson had more on that story.
The Nobel Peace Prize recipients were praised for their efforts to document war crimes, human rights abuses and the abuse of power. Ales Bialyatsky has championed democracy in Belarus for decades. The Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties monitors political persecutions in occupied Ukraine, and the human rights organization Memorial was shut down earlier this year by the Supreme Court of Russia. Sally Patterson, London.
In the coming week, Airbus and Air France go on trial in Paris over a crash that claimed nearly 230 lives over the Atlantic in 2009. President Biden heads to Colorado to campaign in America's midterm elections, and the final hearing of the committee investigating the Capitol Hill riots will take place in Congress. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. Simon Marks reporting.
Hours spent volunteering at a local homeless shelter truly make her death at the hands of a drunk driver earlier this week all the harder to take for this school and this community.
I never knew Amanda, but everywhere I went there were touching reminders of the caring friend she would have been to me had I known her.
Losing Amanda was one of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with, but I knew I had to be strong for this community. I couldn't let them go through the funeral without my support.
She's so much better than all of us. She was so much good. She can love so many people. She loved you so much. What's your name? She loved you, Russell.
And we have O'Brady Shaw with us right now.
Thanks, Brooke.
Not quite how I would have reported the story. Seems a bit unprofessional to let yourself get so emotional.
Well, when people are feeling pain, I feel it too. Don't you ever get emotionally invested in a story?
No, I don't. You know, I had my tear ducts cauterized years ago, and I like to keep my emotions stored in a special place in my mind where they only come out for my night terrors.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
And we're back here on Free Talk Live. Phones are open as we kick off the third hour of the live Sunday episode of the program. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Coming up, when we get the chance, we'll talk about a jet fuel contamination issue happening in Hawaii regarding the U.S. military. And it's Ian, Nikki, and Richie Rich here in the studio tonight. Also, just spotted some other interesting news since we were just talking about Ukraine and the Russia conflict. And, of course, both sides are the bad guy, as all governments of the world are. But there's some interesting news about how much worse things are getting in Ukraine. You know, the bastion of democracy, the bastion of freedom. At least that's what the Western mainstream media wants you to believe.
That's the propaganda that
Total
they're pushing.
Propaganda. Of course, earlier this year, we know that right when the conflict began, Ukraine locked down the borders to all males, I think upwards of age 60. They couldn't leave because they could be conscripted into the Ukrainian military, and they wanted to make sure they stuck around.
Fight for your country.
They further restricted the opposition party from being able to run in elections. Further, they abolished the opposition party even further. So if you were a pro-Russian party in Ukraine, you didn't exist anymore.
Sounds like the beginnings of a dictatorship.
They denied the election results from the recent referendum in eastern Ukraine, in the Donbass province, or the Donbass section in the areas to the south of that. They said, nope, those are illegitimate. That's a sham election. So
but you're not allowed to do that.
Democracy apparently doesn't count where they don't want it to count.
Yeah. Well, that's the same thing here, too.
They've also banned the Russian language in all kinds of governmental areas and supposedly maybe banning it from just use in society.
That's a weird one because there's going to be native Russian speakers there.
Sorry.
Okay.
Keep your... Oh, sorry about that, Nikki. You're back.
That's all right. I was wondering
Ukraine.
where this was.
We're talking
Ukraine?
about. We're going through the list of things that belie, that they have done, that completely belie the Western media claim that Ukraine is this bastion of democracy. When they've banned the opposition party, and they've and apparently they've now passed they're passing a law according to RT.com. Which they also won't let you access, by the way. The Ukrainian government and the the European Union will not allow their people to access RT. To get the other side of the story, according to this, August 30th, Ukraine's rubber stamp parliament, the Verkhovna Rada, passed a bill on the media at the first reading, despite the numerous changes that the 300-page document has undergone since Vladimir Zelensky's team developed and submitted it a few years ago.
Before the conflict even started.
Its essence remains unchanged. If it becomes law, the authorities' power over virtually all media outlets will be essentially limitless. The main danger this bill presents is that it grants government agencies the authority to block internet resources without any court proceedings and revoke licenses from broadcast and print media solely on the basis of complaints. Now, of course, we in the United States don't even understand the idea of a license for print media. We don't have that here. But, of course, the U.S. has licenses for broadcast, so U.S. isn't that much better than Ukraine in that way. The huge power would be vested in the National Council for Television and Radio Broadcasting. So they're equivalent of what sounds like the FCC. there in Ukraine. Ukrainian journalists have been criticizing the bill since the first version appeared in 2018, asserting that it abolishes both freedom of speech and freedom of the press. The representative from OSCE, which I'm not clear what that is, representative on freedom of the media, Harlem Désir, called that version of the law, quote, a blatant violation of freedom of speech, stating that its adoption could jeopardize pluralism in the media market, impose additional costs on the media, and negatively affect the reflection of a diversity of ideas and opinions.
So only state-approved thought is going to be acceptable.
Yeah, presuming this thing passes, and as they described the parliament as a rubber stamp parliament,
there you go.
You know, the opposition party's not even allowed to exist now in Ukraine, so the odds that there's going to be anyone standing in the way of this seems pretty slim. The story says here that, so again, this started in 2018, so since then, criticism of the bill from the Ukrainian journalists in this OSCE organization had an effect. It was sent for revision in 2020, but the changes only included some clarifications concerning gender equality and coverage of sexual orientations.
Never let a good crisis go to waste is apparently a global phenomenon.
Well, sure, right? That's a great point. And as we've seen, war is the health of the state. And the state will use an ongoing conflict as an excuse. Well, you know, we wouldn't do this in normal times,
right.
But this is an emergency. We are at war, and we can't just have the enemy having access to radio, television, and print journalism.
Yep. Right. Even here, it's my understanding that the Patriot Act was written well in advance of the attacks on 9/11.
They had it ready to go.
They're ready to go.
That's convenient.
They did.
It is. Mm-hmm. So this thing going from 2018, right, well before any invasion by Russia, now's the time to bring it out because no opposition, rubber stamp parliament, let's get it passed, and then the state controls the media.
Now here in the U.S., they can't get away with that as easily because we do have that whole pesky First Amendment, freedom of speech. That's kind of been,
for now.
You know, but for lack of not trying, they have kind of upheld that over the years, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's been whittled away at. Obviously, it doesn't truly exist here on the radio because there's certain words we can't say, there's certain topics we can't cover in depth. But for the most part, it still is. It's not a dead letter. It still does exist, and they can't just come right out and ban things. So that's why they're having their mega corporate buddies do it for them. So it's happening here.
Sneaky.
Just that, as we were talking about at the beginning of the show, it's Twitter, it's Instagram, Facebook. These mega platforms, the big media people that refuse to let libertarians into the debate. So the controls here is just less in your face than it is in Ukraine.
And we have more options. Right, like we can do stuff on the internet, and as you said, the servers, the decentralized federated servers to get those social media accounts reopened exist. But if they're controlling the internet, right, in Ukraine, like they control or attempt to control the internet in China, it's less likely that those things get built or accessed from those locations.
At the same time, the bill contains a ban on publishing any messages contradicting the official government line on military issues. It's likewise forbidden to cover speeches made by officials of the aggressor country, meaning Russia, or cast former USSR party functionaries in a positive light, for example, including Ukraine's own Leonid Brezhnev. The law would also hold foreign media responsible for any of its audiovisual content available in Ukraine. Foreign media would be held responsible. I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but that's what they're saying.
Sanctions.
Social networks, including foreign ones, will be obliged to remove any material the National Council deems undesirable.
This is scary. I mean, that's like some 1984 stuff.
But yet the leftists, or the people, because I guess some people on the right, but the people cheering on Ukraine are probably going to cheer this on. They're cheering on the suicide bombing this weekend.
Well, people aren't going to hear about this, you know, like all those people hanging Ukraine flags in their front windows. They have absolutely no clue what is going on over there.
Well, okay, and to be clear then, are we obligated to take this story with a grain of salt?
It's from
because
RT.
of the source?
Yeah. But you know what? Look, the source, in my opinion, is one of the best sources of journalism on the planet. In the same way that Al Jazeera is one of the best sources of journalism on the planet. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them to report accurately necessarily on the Russian government, but I've been surprised throughout this conflict because I've been looking at RT on a daily basis. It's the only way to get the other side of the story, basically.
I agree.
And I'll give an example of one of the stories that I thought for sure it would just be total propaganda. It was when they were cracking down ostensibly on some of the alternative radio and television broadcasters in Russia. And RT gave it a fair shake. They reported on what was happening. That was that there were the Russian government was going after prosecution of this one radio, quote-unquote, liberal radio station and a liberal television station. But they actually went to the editor, the chief staff editor of those publications, and interviewed him and gave his opinion. And he said, this is unconstitutional. We're going to court. We're going to fight this. They gave his side of the story in the reports. Like, I
generally agree with you. Yeah. I read Russia Today on a regular basis as well.
But take the grain of salt.
Take the grain of salt because it's really close to this particular conflict.
But it's also not unbelievable based on what Ukraine has already done with restricting the opposition. There's more coming up here, and you can join us on Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Yep. And we're back.
There we go. Hey, I did pretty good with it tonight.
You did, absolutely.
So far. That was the first time I forgot. Welcome.
And it doesn't have to be a thing, right? Do your thing.
It's a Sunday night thing. You guys have made a tradition. I figured I'd keep it going.
Appreciate it.
The number here is 603-283-6160. It's been a while since I've been on the Sunday night show, so glad to be here with you guys as the captain has the weekend off. It's Ian, Nikki, and Richie Rich here in the studio tonight. We're getting you up to date on the latest proposed law in Ukraine, which may very well be approved by the Verkhovna Rada, which is apparently their parliament, their version of parliament there, that is looking at a 300-page document introduced back in 2018 that, according to critics, would basically allow the government there to block any internet resources without any court proceedings, revoke licenses from broadcast and print media solely on the basis of complaints. So not really mattering whether the complaints are founded, just...
Or who's complaining.
Yeah, somebody doesn't like what you said, so you're done.
You're done.
And basically allowing people to... anybody that's, for instance, criticizing the government's official line on military issues, that could be banned by this current text, which has been revised since 2018, but isn't much better than the original draft, according to watchdog journalists there in Ukraine.
Just wait until that actually becomes illegal and all the penalties that will come with opposing, speaking against. Yes.
Yeah, that's
what's next.
It may be illegal. It says it contains a ban on publishing messages contradicting the official government line. If it's a ban, then that presumably means there's a punishment for violating the ban.
What's that going to be?
Who don't know? Some sort of public hanging for journalists.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. Scary stuff. So you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. Let's go to David. He's in New Mexico. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, let me tie anything to anything. All right, and it actually does kind of tie into what I was going to say about John J. Romero Jr. tonight, about where he comes from in New Mexico. Yeah, but I got it. And Monica Zamora, and where they come from in New Mexico. They both happen to come from northern New Mexico, up there in that huge, thousands and thousands and thousands of square miles of no industry whatsoever. But hey,
David, are you on a speakerphone or anything?
No,
okay.
Just on the same old cell phone.
I don't know why it's always so crackly. Can you back off the phone 6 inches and see how that sounds?
6 feet, perhaps.
Yeah. I need to have the phone about 3 feet from my face in order.
That's
for
much clearer. It sounds a lot better. If you could regularly do that, it would be very helpful.
Yeah, I try to, but half the time I'm reading something, looking at some notes or something on the screen at the same time. I'm trying to talk into it, so that screws it up. But anyway, what I was going to say.
And then you get loud, and then it starts doing it again. So can you back it up?
Right.
Back it up.
Okay. Well, I got it at full arm's length, and I.
Are you serious? It's at arm's length right now.
Just put the phone down.
That's
and walk away.
Put the phone down and walk over to the other side.
What's the point you're making? Go ahead.
The point I'm making is that the exception to the rule, the exception to the stereotype, is that New Mexico is statistically last in everything good, except for they're tied with Mississippi half the time. But they're last in everything good. But the irony of that is that they were settled by Sephardic crypto Jews.
Not as in cryptocurrency, but as in secret. Crypto as in they didn't want to let anyone know they were Jewish.
Seems like a good survival tool.
When the king and queen of Spain hired Christopher Columbus to come over, who happened to be Jewish, to come over to the New World, a lot of the volunteers, quote unquote volunteers, were crypto Sephardic Jews conversos is another term that had gone through the Spanish Inquisition and wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. And so they came to New Mexico and have been lasting everything ever since.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I thought Jewish people were supposed to be good at everything and rich.
That's why I said it was the exception to the stereotype.
Okay. So thank you for the call tonight. The number here is 603-283-6160. So back to the story here from RT about this new media restriction law that may go into place, 300 pages, would also hold foreign media responsible for any content available in the Ukraine. Moreover, social networks, including foreign social networks, would be obliged to remove any material that the National Council deems undesirable. The deadlines for removing incorrect content, so-called, or replacing it with so-called correct material have also been tightened.
So fact checkers in some form or fashion for foreign media.
Yep. And supposedly legal consequences if they don't do it. Among the offenses that can get a media outlet banned is distributing programs in which any participant is on the list of persons who pose a threat to the national media space in Ukraine. This is compiled by the National Council itself and does not require anyone's consent.
The domestic terrorist list.
Otherwise, the essence and spirit of the bill is preserved, including severe censorship of so-called objectionable media. The American Committee for the Protection of Journalists didn't call on the Verkhovna Rada to reject the bill on media for nothing.
I can't see this ending poorly at all.
Yeah. It's ugly. The president of the European Federation of Journalists bluntly stated that it means compulsory media regulation, quote, fully controlled by the government, worthy of the worst authoritarian regimes. She's convinced that, quote, a state that would apply such provisions simply has no place in the European Union.
Wow.
Oh, well.
Good for her.
Yeah.
So I mean, can't be a bad thing to get them out of there, but, you know.
There's even more interesting history here. According to this, the war on journalists didn't just start in Ukraine. In the year 2000, there was an abduction and death of Georgy Gongags, the creator of the Ukrainian Truth website, who harshly criticized corruption in the country's highest echelons of power. A number of high-ranking officials were accused of being involved in the murder of that journalist, who then-President Leonid Kuchma viewed as objectionable, but the investigation revealed the involvement of only 4 perpetrators. One of these was the head of the Ukrainian Ministry of Internal Affairs main criminal investigation department, General Pukach, who allegedly gave the order to liquidate the journalist.
Wow, they didn't cover that up very well.
The irony is the U.S. media was very anti-Ukraine back then, yeah. And right up until, you know, the Russian invasion story.
Yeah, there have been some. I remember seeing an image online showing pre-invasion, like The Guardian or other Western media versus headlines after the invasion. What's up with that?
Well,
the
now
narrative
they just
changed.
Yeah, now they hate Russia more than they hated Ukraine, so they have to pretend to like Ukraine because they hate Russia.
The new bad guy.
But clearly...
Oh, the old bad guy. Same as the new bad guy.
But clearly Ukraine hasn't changed all that much, right? They were doing bad things back then.
Right.
They're escalating the bad things now, but it's being covered up in the Western media because Russia's worse.
Well, it doesn't matter what... Yeah, exactly. Like you said, it doesn't matter what Ukraine is doing. Russia bad. That's all you need to know.
Right now, that's all you need to know. 2 years ago, Ukraine was terrible. Why would they even?
Here's more. Anatoly Shary, who was engaged in a high-profile investigative journalism for a number of Ukrainian publications between 2008 and 2011, almost shared the other journalist Gongda's fate. In 2011, a non-staff employee of the Ministry of Internal Affairs tried to intimidate the journalist, and a month later an attempt was made on his life. However, afterwards, Ukrainian police said that Shary himself was to blame. As a result, he was forced to flee the country and officially registered in the EU as a political refugee. They were trying to kill him for exposing the story about the murder of the other journalist from 20 years ago. Sounds like a wonderful place to be. More coming up.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And a week that began with Russian President Vladimir Putin formally annexing 4 parts of Ukraine ended with President Biden telling a group of Democratic Party funders that he fears the possibility of Armageddon if the Russian leader uses nuclear weapons. The White House says there's been no change in America's nuclear posture, despite growing threats from figures close to the Russian leader. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says no new intelligence has been gleaned, suggesting a nuclear strike is imminent.
No, the president was speaking about concerns about Putin's threats to use nuclear weapons, just as he did at the UN General Assembly. And we have done over the past few weeks, you have heard us say this over and over again. You've heard it from the National Security Advisor, how seriously we are taking this.
She again insisted that the US will never recognize the annexed Ukrainian regions as part of Russia. President Biden said the US is trying to determine what kind of off-ramp might entice Vladimir Putin to step back from the abyss. Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin insisted on Friday there's only one way out.
The way out of the conflict is for Russia to leave Ukraine. That's the way out of the conflict. Thank you.
There were 2 separate awful events in Asia over the past week. In Indonesia, at least 125 people were killed in a stampede at a soccer stadium after the police used tear gas to disperse fans who had poured onto the pitch. An internal police review described that decision as a mistake, saying no orders had been given to use the gas. Meanwhile, in Thailand, 37 people, including 20 children, were killed when a former police officer opened fire at a nursery school in the northeast of the country. He later killed himself. Reporter Tommy Walker in Bangkok covered that story.
It's rare to have mass shootings, but it looks like it's going to be Thailand's worst ever mass shooting. He was obviously on a rampage, and the Thai chief of police said that they believe that the gunman was on some form of amphetamine.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had another rough week. There were mixed reviews for her speech at the Conservative Party's annual conference, in which she insisted she can navigate the country through a winter of tempest and turmoil. The UK's National Grid, though, warned this week of possible 3-hour power cuts for homeowners as the winter advances. US President Joe Biden unveiled new moves on marijuana just 1 month ahead of crucial midterm elections.
No one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs.
He's pardoning thousands of marijuana convictions, targeting the racial disparity in prosecutions for possession, and ordering his health secretary to consider whether weed should really still be treated in legal terms on a par with heroin and LSD. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
And we're back here on Free Talk live Sunday show. Phone number for you if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
It's Nikki.
And Richie Rich.
Whether we're talking about the latest corrupt law in Ukraine, Kanye West. We started out the show with him, the mullet
World Championships.
Contest, the mullet championships. We've been all over the map here tonight. Of course, the phones are open. You can bring up anything you want to discuss. And I also want to remind you that you can support Free Talk Live directly by going to amps.freetalklive.com, as Colby Keddington has done. He is a silver level supporter of Free Talk Live. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. It's a way for you to help us continue the message of liberty to as many people on broadcast radio and on the internet as possible. So again, thank you, Colby, for your assistance. He's silver level, which means he's doing what we ask, $5 a month. Thank you for that. You get some perks. You get some benefits like access to the AMP-only podcast that features the full radio show without recorded commercials. And so if you're not getting enough content from our daily digest from the regular podcast, you can grab the full 2-hour radio show. It's a 3-hour radio show, but once you cut out all the ads and news breaks and stuff, it comes down to about 2 hours. So if you can get that via RSS, via Patreon, when you sign up over at amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. Let's go to James calling us from the Four Corners area, listening to KVFC in Cortez, Colorado. Go ahead, James.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me on.
Welcome, sir.
First of all, I'd like to say regarding the earlier topic regarding Mr. West, I'm kind of like John McCain. Like, if you really want to upset me, play some rap music. So, but moving on from that, what I really want to discuss is the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, and then a followed up destruction of the bridge linking Crimea to Ukraine.
So the pipeline, false flag attack or no?
What's that? Say again?
The pipeline, false flag attack or no?
Oh, well, somebody definitely blew it up.
Yeah, probably didn't do that on its own.
Shark attack.
Yeah. What really concerns me is that the Honorable Mr. Biden at a dinner party was discussing the threat that Putin was going to use nuclear weapons, and now I've just learned that they've raised the nuclear threat level up, and I'm just wondering if they're using it as an excuse for a preemptive strike, that we might be worried about what we're going to do.
Who's we?
America.
Oh, you mean the government, the U.S. federal government?
Right, they might be justifying ourselves using nukes on them, rather,
Could be. I hope not.
So do I.
Yeah, that
But
sounds
it's kinda
terrifying.
scary.
Yeah, that is scary.
And
But who do you think was behind the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Do you have a theory?
I don't, and I don't want to discuss it, but it's really hard.
You brought it up.
Joe Biden.
I did bring it up. Okay.
You did see the video of Joe Biden from February where he promises to take out the Nord Stream pipeline if Russia invaded Ukraine. You've seen that video, right?
I didn't see the video, but I did read the articles about it.
And then Poland thanking him for doing it after it got...
that's right. And then there was apparently evidence, by the way, one of these internet guys who knows about the flight technology, there's one of these flight trackers. Somebody linked to it on our chat server at chat.freetalklive.com, where a dude pulls up, I forget, it was like Skyview or something like this, one of these things where it's on your desktop computer and it's really fancy and it shows you the flight paths of all these different things in the past, and you can look at the serial numbers of the planes, and there's a plane, P-8... Poseidon, I think is what it was called. It's known as like a sub-hunter plane, and it's the only plane in the vicinity of this area of the Baltic Sea, and it's at the time at which
It's a U.S. plane?
It's a U.S. plane, but it doesn't have its number. Like, it's all blacked out or whatever. These characters are redacted from this particular plane, but it comes in, it crosses the Baltic Sea, gets a refuel, so when it meets up with another plane for a while, spins in a circle with it, flies in a circle, refuels, goes back over the Baltic Sea, and this is in the middle of the night, on the night in question, drops from 20,000 feet to 10,000 feet, does at 10,000 feet, and then
blows
flies
up the
away.
pipeline.
And then flies away. So,
let's fill in that question mark with conspiracy theories.
So who knows? Who knows what was going on
Right.
there?
So who knows? It's just like the Malaysian flight 17 that was mysteriously shot down. They say there was the thing is, you just don't know unless you're there. And what really upsets me is that It's so hard to get objective news.
Yes, that's
and
true.
Real war reporters on the ground that are reporting the truth.
Right.
Of what's going on, because one side's saying this.
You never know unless you're there for sure.
And even then, you still don't know.
Well, but generally we walk around our lives, right, operating on like the best case assumption, right? So like all the evidence points this way, and the media says like, was or not, false flag. And I go, well, probably not. You know,
you got to make your own. You got to come to your own conclusions after you've taken in as much information as you can. And the thing is, you just don't know who to trust. You don't know what information is valid. I remember, speaking of the mainstream media and the war reporters, there was some image that I saw this week that purported to be like, I don't remember if it was CNN or who it was, one of the Western, The Guardian or something. Some journalist with like a helmet on, a flak jacket.
Like in front of a green screen or something.
No. He wasn't in front of a green screen. He was like laying down in what was supposedly the front lines, but in the background, there's just some old woman standing there like she was just on a shopping trip or something like that. Didn't look like she was concerned with what was going on.
They get caught all the time
doing that stuff. Yeah. Thank you, James, for the call tonight. I do appreciate hearing from you. And it's just sloppy work on their part. But let's go to continue here. We got Turd Ferguson. He's on the line in Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Turd.
Yeah, so I just wanted to call in and correct the record from the other night when I called in. I can't remember what night it was, but Aria was the first chair.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and recap it because I don't know who can recall that. So go ahead. What were you calling about?
Right. So I called in and discussed Joe Biden's quote-unquote pardon of 6,500 marijuana users that are currently quote-unquote currently sitting in jail for simple marijuana.
No, they're not. They're not sitting in jail.
That's right. That's right. They're not sitting.
Who said they were sitting in jail?
Joe Biden did, and a bunch of his aides did initially. But I called in to say it was a big political stunt, and that part I was actually right about. And I said there were very few people that were actually going to get released on that, and I was wrong about that because it turns out, and I've got this article pulled up here from the Washington Post, which is an establishment-approved source here. So none of them can accuse me of misinformation. And it says right here, White House officials said there are no individuals currently in federal prison solely for simple possession of cannabis. And I think all of your Democratic listeners, if there are any left, I mean, I know you guys went against their kind of opinion on the pandemic. So there might not be any left.
Jerome, we're talking directly to you now.
Right. Well, if there are any left, you should know right now that there are 0 people sitting in jail for the thing that Joe Biden said he was going to pardon them for.
Yeah.
So this is an enormous political stunt.
I could have told you that. In fact, I'm pretty sure I did mention that earlier this week, is that this is something where you're going to get sentenced to time served for the night you spent in jail when you got arrested, and you'll owe some sort of a fine, and that's it. But it is pardoning their record, so they will not have this charge on their record. It is doing something, Turd, even though
they don't have to check the box that says I'm a felon now when they're filling out job applications.
I don't think it was a felony before.
I mean, that would be ridiculous if it was.
It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think it was. These are people who got caught with a little bit of marijuana when they're out at a national park or, standing at the Lincoln Memorial or something stupid like that. But it is still something that is on their record and now purportedly will no longer be on their record. So it is something. It's not an end to the war on drugs. It's barely even the beginning to the end of the war on drugs. But if something big comes out of this, it might be the potential rescheduling for cannabis, which he's supposedly ordering them to look at. It wouldn't surprise me if it takes him 2 more years, though, to figure that one out. Thanks, Turd. More coming up.
Dine with Seinfeld's parents. I'm Holland Cook with inflation hacks. You can still afford to dine out occasionally by shopping smart. As they do at Del Boca Vista, eat early. In restaurant lingo, you are in the first turn. A certain oyster bar my wife and I like offers buck a shuck before 6 p.m. Other tips? Opt in if your favorite spot has an email list. They'll tout specials. Have dessert at home. It and drinks are restaurants' most profitable items, and every add-on adds up to the tip. Members actually bother reading what AAA and AARP send you. You're entitled to a discount at some restaurants. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. forkfest.party. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
And we're back.
We are back here on Free Talk Live. Moments remain, perhaps enough time for you if you want to join us at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Don't forget you can join Richie Rich on his show. How do people find it?
Anarchistexperience.com is the best place.
Anarchistexperience.com. Yep. And is it once a week these days?
Yeah, it's always been once a week,
okay.
About an hour a week. We record live on Clubhouse Saturday afternoons around 4 p.m. Eastern time.
Clubhouse, is that it's one of those online
It's an
chat
app
room
on
things,
your
right?
phone. It's an audio chat room.
Does that mean listeners can come in?
Yeah, you can come in and listen to the live show. You can participate in the live show. There's a little button that says like raise your hand. And
is that new for you guys or newish?
I mean, newish since the last time I've been on a show with you. Okay. We've probably been, close to a year or more now on that thing. But yeah, we switched over from recording the broadcast to other live options, and that seemed to be the thing that was trending.
What was the topic this weekend?
We covered a lot of the Russian thing too, because my co-host.
Which Russian thing?
The nuclear option.
Oh, okay.
So last week, our show last week, my co-host was up in arms because he was concerned. Like, we started the show with like, should I buy a bunker, Rich? Because he was scared of the Russians.
Isn't he in Hawaii?
He is.
Okay.
But we can get to the Hawaii thing if you want.
Yeah.
It's a military base, man.
Right.
It's like a military
It is a
base
target, then, is
on
what
an
you're
island.
saying.
Yeah, for a military strike.
I'm sure there's a bunker there.
Well,
Not
him,
for you.
For him, yeah.
And can you build a bunker on an island where you presumably you're going to dig and hit water, right? If it's anything like Florida.
I have no idea where the water line is at the bottom.
I mean, unless you're on a mountain,
Okay.
It's probably
There's a lot of mountain ranges.
Yeah.
But either way,
is his house on a higher
Yeah,
up than sea
I mean,
level?
yeah, it's higher than sea level.
Okay, then he could do it.
But he was concerned about it, and his big concern was like, why isn't the mainstream media talking about it? And so this week we got vindicated because that was all that was in the news was, the nuclear option. So
Right.
he was ahead of the game on that one.
It's not hard to be ahead of the mainstream media, though.
Right.
So check it out, anarchistexperience.com. It's live, it's podcast. Listen how you want.
Yep.
Right? Let's go to Joe. He's in Kansas listening to KINA. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, hello. So I got a couple of friends, who have some information about this Nord Stream 2 situation. One of them is he's one of these airplane geeks. He fixed airplanes in and out of the United States and all over the world. He actually had posted about this Poseidon aircraft and got banned from Facebook.
Uh-oh.
So now you know it's true.
What did he share about it?
Well, he basically just shared, this flight path and just like, boy, this is interesting. That's all he wrote.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That was enough to get him banned?
That's crazy.
You go against the narrative.
I mean, I'm not
right?
surprised. But...
I haven't had a chance to talk to him. It's been well over a week since I've talked to him. And then one of my best friends I went to school with, university with, he actually works in Special Forces. And I asked him to comment on it. What are his thoughts about it? And he says, I have no comment.
I mean, that's also the responsible thing to say if you don't know. So.
Well.
He could probably get in trouble if he did comment about it.
That's possible
as well.
too, yeah.
Either way, regardless of whether he says yes or no. But I mean, he and I have been very close for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
He's never really hidden much from me, because I don't ask a lot of detailed questions.
Blink twice if Biden didn't.
But I did ask him what his opinion was on Nord Stream 2 and it being, destroyed, quote unquote. He says, I don't have a comment on it.
Mm-hmm.
If the police were doing an investigation on the Nord Stream 2 thing, just detective work, right? And you have a guy several months ago saying, I'm going to blow that thing up.
He didn't say that specifically, but he basically said we're going to take it out or something to that effect.
However, right, he is suspect number one on the investigatory list.
Right.
We're going to talk to that guy first and find out what he knows and build our investigation from there.
Yeah, and then you learn that that guy's plane was in the vicinity at that time.
Right. There's prime suspects and there's other suspects.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I personally believe that we did have a hand in it. I really
you
do.
mean the
I
US?
didn't.
Yeah, I didn't do it.
Sorry.
The Bidens.
The federal government.
Okay.
I apologize.
Thank you.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, you got to keep the criminals in their
US
place.
Government, yes, the U.S. federal government, I believe, did have a hand in it.
Yeah, and again, ask the other question is who benefits from this? Does Russia benefit from blowing up its own $20 billion pipeline that they were hoping to use to sell gas consistently to Western Europe?
I mean, if it's a false flag, but if it's a false flag and they benefit in some other way, right? That's why the United States prefers
I don't
false
think they
flags.
benefit enough to be able, because that's a huge financial loss for them. Just for them to be like, oh, looks like America did it.
Right, and they are, by the way, now saying that there's another string, apparently, of pipes down there that wasn't damaged and that they could still use that to deliver.
Even more of a reason why it's a false flag then, because it doesn't really affect the delivery.
But see, for me, when it comes to Putin, knowing his past and where he's at now in power, false flags don't matter.
What do you mean?
False flags don't matter to him because he's no longer a spy. He's in charge. He could sit there. Could you imagine could you imagine what would happen if he was to sit there and say and know that the United States did it versus sitting there knowing that he did it and then saying that the United States is it? Either way, why would he want to blow it up knowing what he's going to benefit out of it?
Right. Now you have another explosion, by the way, with the Crimean bridge that was bombed by what looks like a suicide bomb. Truck driven by somebody from Russia, but now Russia is saying that he was working with the Ukrainians, and this was a Ukrainian plot, and so Ukraine hasn't taken responsibility for that, but that is the finger pointing that's going on. Thank you, Joe, for the call. I do appreciate hearing from you.
I saw a claim that someone has video evidence that the bridge blew up from the bottom, and so could not have been the truck blowing it up on.
That's the claim.
That's the claim. Well, again.
Who knows what the truth is? But the Russians are claiming they investigated it and they determined that it was the Ukrainians. But the related story here from RT, Ukraine is now apparently publicly blowing up bridges and mining roads along the border with Belarus.
All right.
According to the chairman of the State Border Committee of Belarus, Minsk has accused Kyiv of planning imminent strikes on its territory. Today, almost all border bridges have been blown up, and automobile and railway border routes are completely mined, said Anatoly Lapo, the chairman of the border committee. Right. Ukrainian forces have fortified the border, quote, to the extent they put up anti-tank mines in 3 rows on the roads. Now, here you have to wonder, why are they doing this? Are they trying to keep Ukrainians from leaving into Belarus, or are they trying to keep the Belarusians from coming into Ukraine?
I mean, either way, back to my previous example of detective investigations, right? A bridge blows up, and you've got these people blowing up bridges.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who would you look to first?
Indeed. The day before the news broke, or excuse me, the troops Kyiv has sent to the border are, quote, not border guards, he claimed. We are under pressure. They're aiming at our border guards. Sometimes they shoot in the air. Constant aerial reconnaissance is being carried out because apparently Ukrainian forces have now fortified the border, and there are troops that are apparently being built up.
Is it Belarus, that Lukashenko guy?
Correct.
Okay. So he's not all that popular either, right?
Of course not. He's basically a dictator.
Right. So,
but to his credit, he was the guy who was during COVID, he was one of the only presidents whose attitude was F it, just drink some vodka and go to the hockey game. And he just didn't care.
That's how you know when an actual dictator is it's fine. I think America in Europe is overreacting. That's how you know.
That's the guy you trust with the medical news.
I don't know if you trust him, but
he's probably a total scumbag.
It does prove that
he was right about
everybody else was overreacting.
So apparently Lukashenko has accused Ukraine of amassing tens of thousands of soldiers near the border. So what are they planning for?
Get out of Ukraine, migrate to Belarus. Take over there.
We are out of time for tonight, but we'll see you tomorrow. If you didn't get in, because 3 people called in right at the end of the show, do us a favor, call back tomorrow and do it in hour number 1 or 2. That way we can definitely get you on the air. Meanwhile, we'll see you online at freetalklive.com. Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealestate.com.
If you want to know the latest